Hurrdat Sports presents The Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Allen looking left is going to launch. Hardy downfield, overthrown, it's picked. Intercepted by Whitehead.
Dalvin Cook the lone setback. At the 4-yard line, second down and goal. Zach Wilson drops back, lob left for Garrett Wilson. One-handed catch, oh, he's got it! That's a jet touchdown! Garrett Wilson with an unbelievable self-tip, the one-handed snag, and the Jets are a point after away from a tie.
Sam Martin corrals the snap. It's a short punt. Gibson on the return, near side. I don't see any flags. Gibson inside the 30. It's the Jets. And he's gonna go. Jets win it. Touchdown. Rookie Xavier Gibson. Game over.
The scariest thing in the world is a team or a man that has nothing to lose. And right now we're playing sometimes as a team like we have everything to lose because they want to win so badly. And afraid to lose is afraid to win.
Here we go on a Tuesday on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla, right here from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the H&H Chevrolet Studio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Damon Benning. We're on ESPN AM 590 and ESPN Tri-Cities. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for the live stream as well. DB, how you doing this morning?
What up? How we doing? How are things?
A lot going on.
Yeah.
There is a lot going on, and we've got a lot going on the show today as well. We're going to get to some really good stuff starting pretty much right away at 7:30. We're going to talk to Chris Solari. He covers Michigan State football. At 7:45, we will talk to Brett Baker, who is the play-by-play voice for Northern Illinois. And then we'll get to some of our old regulars, Mike Schaefer at 9, and our good friend from the Omaha Storm Chasers, Martie Cordaro, to wrap up the show. And they're wrapping up their season starting tonight, their last homestand tonight through Sunday. They'll be out at Warner Park, so he'll tell us all about that as well. But I think the biggest thing that happened in the sports world happened to one Aaron Rodgers last night.
Yeah, Jets, Jets. And what was a super confusing NFL first weekend? Like, you just never know.
Yeah, there was a lot.
It started on Thursday with the Chiefs losing at home.
Yep.
And then it just got kind of nutty from there.
Well, and there was a lot going on there that maybe didn't line up with our preconceived notions of who teams were.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of surprises, right? I'd probably start with, for me, the way that Green Bay handled Chicago. I would throw Tampa Bay on the road at Minnesota in there.
Tampa Bay's a big one. I wasn't that shocked by Green Bay just because I'm not high on Chicago.
Yeah, but, I mean, that was kind of pillar to post.
Sure, yeah. It was more dominating than I thought.
And,
sure.
I mean, Green Bay obviously pretty good defensively. If I mean, all you need is a little love, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that how the song goes?
Which
all
song
we
is it?
need is love.
That's the Beatles.
Yeah, I'm not a Beatles guy, but
it is.
I know that's not. I know that's not a popular take. My buddy that I coach with wanted to kick me out of the car on the way back from Minnesota a couple years ago when I was not fond of the Beatles.
Listen,
sometimes some guys can be too cool for school.
Yeah, I know. 100%.
Listen, I understand if they're not for you.
Yeah.
Where I get into issues and where people say they weren't that good, because that's a different thing.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I don't want to get your dander up early.
I mean, it already is.
We needed some peacemakers yesterday.
It's been up since we talked to Sam yesterday, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I need to do a better job. The visuals that they put on Twitter of my reactions to what he's saying, I was like, oh, I'm very expressive.
Yeah. I'd like to play cards with you one day. Oh, Ravi jumping up and down in his seat. Oh, man, my man's sitting on some pocket rockets.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. But I did feel, and we'll get to it later, but I felt great after listening to Coach Rule's press conference, because I felt like we were like darn near saying the same thing.
I think we were asking the right questions yesterday.
Yeah,
rather than some of the obvious stuff that some of the more low hanging fruit.
And I hope that's why people like or enjoy listening to the show. I still couldn't believe, and it never fails, right? Mm-hmm. It's like people will do this summation of what they heard on the show, and I don't know if they just hear snippets or what, but I was like, at no point was I really giving you my opinion on what I would have done.
Right.
I prefaced the whole show by saying, hey, listen, I'm not going to be a fan today. I'm not going to be anything. I'm going to tell you what I think coaches are thinking throughout this whole mental exercise. And inevitably one dude is like, man, I lost all respect for you, man. You can't defend Jeff Sims. I was like, I'm 100% sure that's not
really not what happened.
It's not what I was
really
doing.
Not
but
what happened.
Hey, listen, like I'm here for it. It's cool. Like I don't, probably 8 or 9 years ago, that stuff I'd be like,
get under your skin a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm so used to it now.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk a lot. Like that stuff happens.
Yeah, right? It kind of, I think it sunk in for me like 2 years ago. I had this person that I kind of know a little bit that they texted me basically saying I had said something on the air that I knew I hadn't said.
Right.
And I was like, hey, what segment are you talking about that you think I said this? And I went back and listened to it. And I had said literally the exact opposite and had provided the caveat of I'm definitely not saying this, and then went on into my point. And somehow from that, they got that I was saying the first thing that I explicitly said I was not.
Yeah, sometimes I just think it's just human nature to like want your pound of flesh.
Well,
right?
and you hear what you want to hear sometimes. Too.
Oh, 100%. So, sure. And I don't begrudge. Like, I mean, that's just part of it. It's part of fandom, and
honestly, that's the thing that got me a little bit riled up with Sam yesterday. You kept saying pound of flesh. He used the term punishment for Jeff Sims. He goes, if you only want the backup quarterback in there as punishment for Jeff Sims, then you're not putting that guy in a very good spot. And I really take objection to that word. Because
do you need a gavel?
I do. I need the objection.
Do you know what I would say?
Sustained.
No, overruled.
Sustained.
Here we go again.
Valid objection. It's because I'm not doing it because it's like Jeff Sims is a puppy and he tinkled in the house. Like I'm not trying to rub his nose in it, right? I'm trying to correct the behavior that we don't like.
Right.
And in order to do that, there has to be consequences. And to me, the most effective consequence for an athlete is playing time.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's basketball, whether it's football, if you take them off the field, the message gets through real quick. Now, how they respond to it depends on the guy, right? It just does. But that's the best tool to shape behavior that you do or don't want to see, I think.
Okay.
If you aren't doing that, you better have a really effective way to hold them accountable somewhere behind the scenes. And maybe they do.
Yeah.
Maybe they do.
Well, I mean, but you got to remember, some people you can tell, hey, go to your room.
Yeah.
Some people you can say, hey, get out of your room, go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Some other people are like, you're not talking to your friends or you're grounded.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on what floats people's boats, right? I have a couple. I've given this example. I have a couple kiddos at home that you'd have to, if you wanted to curb the behavior, you'd have to have completely opposite approaches.
And I totally get that.
So.
But the problem with the Jeff Sims situation is it's not happening in a vacuum, right? Because his behavior or his play, right? I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I don't know Jeff Sims. I wouldn't comment on that. But when I say behavior, I mean his behavior on the football field in terms of turning the ball over too much has an impact on everyone else in the locker room.
I tried to kind of give a precursor in the offseason. This started in the spring when I said, I think it's going to be a good combination between Sims and Satterfield, not because I'm banking on the fact it would work, but I'm banking on the fact that given what I know about their personality traits, one has to kind of be a part. One has to have the attributes for the other to function.
Sure.
Like, Coach Satt has kind of a coaching style, and Jeff Sims has the ability to kind of handle it, right? And this whole thing started when Casey decided that he was going to leave. I think this is when it first came up, and
so that's the other thing I wanted to talk about.
And I said, so much for starting on the NFL. But I said, it's like sometimes people's temperaments just don't mesh, right? I never thought Casey was afraid of competition. I didn't ever think that Casey didn't think he couldn't win the job. I thought that there were things about Casey Thompson's personality where he had to be operating in the know from a preparation standpoint, that it kind of became an obsessive thing where he crossed over from committed to doing the task, right, on that continuum spectrum, that he became obsessed. And a lot of times in athletes, that doesn't bug me because there has to be some certain amount of obsession. Yeah,
for a lot of guys, it's a positive thing. It can be,
but I think he and Coach Rull had to decide at what cost. Right? Is it detrimental to the greater good that you need to know every step of the way, the breakdown of sequential reps and this, that, and the other. And so then I got into Jeff Sims' personality, and I said, you're going to have to be able to take some tough coaching.
Sure.
And sometimes people may come across as talking to you a little sideways, and you've got to be able to deal with it, because I think Coach Satterfield, contrary to kind of his press conferences where he keeps it very vanilla, he's very direct in his delivery, I think, on the practice field and disseminating information. So you need to have a certain type of personality, and folks, they don't have to understand this, but I would like for them to understand when you're having discussions about getting your guy. Oh, I can't believe they settled on this guy. Hindsight is a beautiful thing,
sure.
and the picture's still not done yet.
Yeah.
Right. But in the moment, like, let's say you're operating in the moment, you're like, I can't believe they married themselves to this guy. You're looking for specific traits and skill sets that give you a chance to function when you're building the culture. Sometimes it's not just the physical tools.
I would say not just the traits on the field.
Right.
And that's where
like that kind of stuff. I hate to say it. No, I don't. But it matters. And sometimes I think when we're kind of far removed, we don't think about those kinds of things. There are lots of people that run businesses that know people are talented, and they say, gosh, it's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that they're productive. I know that they've done X, Y, and Z. It's just not a good fit. And then there are other times where, because they're such a good fit psychologically,
they outperform their talent.
Because they are such a fit. Right. So it's like, that's part of coaching. That's part of like an eye for talent in parts of development. Like, when guy, I hate to use the example because it's a rival, but the folks across the river in Iowa City are very particular about
what
personality fits.
Yeah.
Iowa State's the same way. It's going through the recruiting process. There are very specific things. And so sometimes it can supersede
the physical ability.
The physical abilities. And so I think we're seeing it play out.
Well, and that's actually where I kind of wanted to defend Jeff Sims, because on the one hand, I feel like I'm not being harsh, but judging him critically.
It is what it is, right?
But I do want to defend this whole Casey Thompson thing has kind of crept up in the last couple days, right?
I can't believe it.
And first of all, I think we're misremembering who Casey Thompson was. Like, yes, the numbers ended up looking okay. I don't know that anyone ever felt great about him last year, except for when he was hitting Trey Palmer.
Well, I think
just streaking past guys.
And I'm not going to downplay his ability as quarterback. I thought he's a very functional quarterback, but I will say, I think we lament over Casey Thompson because we saw what the offense was like without him.
Yeah, sure.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, he can't apologize for that.
No.
The offense was built for a guy that has his talents.
Right.
Right. And coincidentally, full disclosure, if we're being honest, he's a perfect example of, did his temperament really fit the design of what they were trying to do? Because one of the main coaches didn't think so.
Yeah.
One of the other coaches was like, I don't care about any of that. I want this guy in our program.
Yeah.
So you have those kinds of back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
because that was clearly Whipple's guy. it was never Coach Frost's guy.
No,
so like you just have that sometimes. And I think that's sometimes, we want to know how the sausage is made, but we don't want to deal with how the sausage is made. And some of that is just part of the deal. And people, typically people just, I just want to win, or I just want this. And a lot of times it's just not that easy. Like there's usually more.
Sure.
There's usually more to it.
Well, I think there's definitely more to the Jeff Sims versus Casey Thompson thing, because
that's not a thing, is it?
A lot of people are talking about it.
No, I don't.
I mean, a lot of people are talking about it.
Okay.
I'm listening to podcasts. I'm on Twitter. Like, it is a thing that came up.
I told you this yesterday, and I've learned this over the years. People can make you dumber.
They can, for sure. But they can also, like, if you're aware of that, they can also make you think about things. And
and I'm, listen, 100%. I listen to people that I don't always agree with all the time, just because there's probably some sort of teachable moment.
Well, I just want to figure out how other people are processing through information,
I think that's the best, yeah.
And I saw
so you can game plan
a lot yesterday.
You like human huddle, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to study.
Yeah, I like to figure out
tendencies, so you know how to attack
tendencies, patterns, like that, and figure out how people like to work. But one of the things that came out of the Thompson versus the Sims thing yesterday was, for me, it started.
Who was talking about this?
Nick Baugh and Bo Ruud talked about it a ton on their postgame.
Okay, cool. Okay. Shout out to Nicholas Allen and Bo.
Love Nick. I don't know Bo, but I like their pods together a lot.
I like Bo a ton. I sat at a couple practices with Bo. I just like his personality. But
yeah,
anyway.
They seem real. I mean, he seems like a real fun guy to hang out with. And their football stuff is usually good, and I like it. I'm not even saying this wasn't good, but it made me think about, okay, yes, from a physical tool standpoint, Nebraska's probably at least 1-1 with Casey Thompson at quarterback on the season.
Oh man, I hate this.
Hold on, I'm getting there. Stick with me. We're getting there.
I got you.
But if you're just talking about, hey, plug and play, everything else is equal, personalities are the same, whatever, you probably get the Minnesota game with Casey Thompson.
Can I just say something?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So I'm very good friends with a gentleman here in the community, and he does life coaching for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something to me a couple of years ago that I think is pretty apropos right here. You don't get, he would tell his family or people around him, right? Because sometimes he can rub people the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you don't get this life without me in it.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You don't get this life without me in it.
Mm-hmm.
So to plug and play a fictitious example for a quarterback in even Steven exchange, you don't get the good without Jeff Sims in it. So you don't get the plays that he made without him in it. You can't just take the good of just substituting the turnovers, because the butterfly effect doesn't work that way. Why do people do that? It doesn't work.
I understand that.
You don't get the outcomes without Sims plays in it. I'm not defending the guy, but you can't erase. He was your most productive offensive player during that time. If you're just going to do linear examples, sans the turnovers, Nebraska's punting the ball from inside the 5 to open the first series against Minnesota.
Totally understand that.
Okay, so it's like I don't know.
But here's where I wanted to go. Even if you're willing to accept that premise, which clearly you're not, but let's pretend you were, for the sake of doing a radio show.
Yeah. Hey, let's play life. I like you, man. You're a funny dude.
Is I think you have to look past what Casey Thompson could do on a football field because of the things that you were just saying about personality types, right? I think the choice of Jeff Sims was made almost outside of the football abilities. Obviously, they saw a quarterback whose skill set or physical abilities they thought they could work with in Jeff Sims. Like I don't think that's crazy to say. They wouldn't have taken him if they didn't. But I think they were more concerned about this is the type of guy that will be bought in and do things the way we want them done in terms of all the other stuff, right? Because in year one to Matt Rule, I think that was more important than, okay, maybe Casey Thompson would have got us to 1-1 instead of 0-2. But Jeff Sims gives me what I want culture and locker room wise that I need in year 2 and year 3, right? You're sacrificing on the front end, whether he would put it in those terms or not.
Who? Coach Rule?
Coach Rule.
Okay.
And he probably wouldn't because he's talked about he doesn't want to mortgage the older
the
guys.
Backs of the veterans, or the mortgage, the older guys'
and
experience on the backs of young players.
And he wants to still try and give the older guys their positive experience and a chance to shape their legacy as Husker football players. So he wouldn't put it this way. But I think if push came to shove and everything else was equal, you could probably get him to admit that he'd rather sacrifice something up front in terms of win than sacrificing something down the road in terms of culture.
I don't know about that.
You don't know?
I don't know about that.
Because
that's kind of deep.
I think that's the thing to me that explains the decision making. Not just between, hey, we'd rather have Jeff Sims and Casey Thompson.
So you think if we were like revisiting like 24 with Jack Bauer and they did that fake stuff where they like strap you to the chair and
they do polygraph. I think
they make you tell the truth.
Yes,
like,
you give a little truth
serum with that serum.
Yeah,
you're like, okay,
I bet
I'll win a few games up front to sacrifice building my culture long term.
I mean, that's what Frost did, right?
No, wait. Are you saying that Coach Rule would?
No, I think he's saying the opposite of that. I think he's saying he would sacrifice a few wins on the front end.
100%. You don't even need the blue.
Well,
that's blue. You don't even need the injection.
So that's what I was confused by. You look at it. I think Rule would say, hey, I'll give up a few here.
Yeah.
To make sure that the culture's right down the road.
I completely.
Whereas that's not how everybody operates. And listen, I know there's a big thing about the Sanders family thinking Nebraska's taking shots at them or whatever. But
okay, I'm not doing
silly.
that. I'm not messing around with. Listen, to the victor goes the spoils.
Sure.
Say this and move. When you win and you rub somebody's face in it, you can make up whatever narrative you want because people are going to gravitate towards newsy, right? So
history is written by the winners.
So, but man, that's I can't believe national. Like I'm not. Nah. We're not gonna make up a narrative just to keep the flames fanned for next year in 2024.
But that's what I mean.
I'm not doing that.
There's different ways to build. Is to try to run right away and try and slow build, and try and give up a couple wins on the front end to make sure it's right on the back end. Mm-hmm. I think that's what Rule's doing. And if you look at it through that lens, it helps explain a lot of what you're seeing.
Yeah. Now back to the NFL.
Well, maybe
that's your fault.
I didn't do it.
I mean,
we've got Chris Solari coming up next to talk about Michigan State football on Benning and Lulla.
We'll be right back in 5 minutes.
With the best interests of everyone, including student athletes.
We'll be right back in 4 minutes.
With the best interests of everyone, including student athletes and the university community in mind, I have suspended Mel Tucker without pay as an additional interim measure.
During university visits We'll be right back in 3 minutes. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We'll be right back in 1 minute. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
With the best interests of everyone, including student athletes and the university community in mind, I have suspended Mel Tucker without pay as an additional interim measure.
Getting right into it here on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Chris Solari. He covers Michigan State football for the Detroit Free Press. Chris, how are you this morning?
Doing well, guys. How are you doing?
Trying to hang in there on the heels of a big one. When the Washington is on tap, I know obviously you don't draw it up this way, but man, is there time enough, Chris, in your opinion, to kind of rally the troops or circle the wagons, if you will?
Well, it's kind of strange. Like last night, I was thinking about some things, and I think from a player's standpoint, from the fact that they've got the coaching staff still intact, and bring in Mark D'Antonio as kind of a consigliere to acting head coach Harlan Barnett. If you look at it, it's kind of got that Cleveland Indians in Major League kind of feel to it. They're having they have the 2013 Big Ten Championship and Rose Bowl reunion this weekend, which Mark D'Antonio was going to be back for anyways. They've got a Hall of Fame induction for Javon Ringer, the former running back, that D'Antonio was going to be in for this week. And after the first couple weeks, just with how some things went down, how poorly the offense played, I think there was a lot of frustration with the fans. The Boo Birds were out early against Central Michigan in the opener, and they were starting to creep in a little bit last week until they started to put Richmond away after a muff punt. This fan base is going to change because the story has changed. Mel Tucker's gone, and I don't think it has anything to do with Mel Tucker per se. Those Boo Birds, I think they were more for the coordinators and the things that people saw on the field. But I think, I don't want to say this is galvanizing the fan base around the players, but I think there's a better understanding of the circumstances that they're going through now that they've essentially their head coach is suspended, but more than likely done. So, what happens from here is going to be interesting because the portal is such a different dynamic. And I think it's important to note that the portal opens for players 30 days after a head coach is fired. Mel Tucker hasn't been fired. So that's critical at this point in the season. I mean, we're talking 2 games into the year for this happening. So it's wild.
Chris, does that lend credence to? There's so many stories, and I mean, you got to be all over the place trying to get on top of this. We know about the reports that happened in March. We know what Coach Tucker said. Is there any credence to the fact that, regardless of who you believe in this situation, that this was going to remain anonymous until it was leaked, maybe by a board of regents or leaked in particular? Because some of the stories out there are that, Miss Tracy didn't want this to be public. She wanted it handled in-house. Is it just convenient given the tenor of the team and the tempo this year?
Well, it was at a point where my understanding through my dealing in this story, the plan was not to run this until closer to October when that hearing was scheduled. So, we're talking late September, early October was when this story was supposed to be going, which obviously gave Brenda Tracy time to decide if she did or didn't want to go with it still publicly.
Right.
But the ESPN story dropping after midnight is essentially what pushed my company, USA Today, and the USA Today Network to publish its story shortly after the anonymous story.
Tough.
And I know for a fact that Brenda Tracy and her attorneys were well aware of what was happening. I was alerted about maybe an hour and a half ahead of time that USA Today was threatening to publish the story. And once that story got out, it was, our team mobilized to get the story from Kenny Jacoby of USA Today Live.
Wow.
Shortly after that. I mean, but the reality was, it was, and in my conversations about what was going on, Brenda Tracy, listen, people could have, this could have been brought out in December. This could have been brought out when the report was completed in July 25th. And it still wasn't made public. So,
do with that what we will.
Yeah, I mean, the circumstances that led to it were the anonymous ESPN story, and who knows where their sourcing was on that, but obviously we were comfortable with the sourcing that we had, seeing as Kenny had been working for months with Brenda on this.
Wow.
Chris, I'm curious. You said that you think Mel Tucker's likely done, and I think most people would tend to agree with you. Is that just you kind of reading the tea leaves, or do you have some kind of information there into the kind of the process of the university, or is that just sort of the temperature of the room?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think at this point, it from my gathering, it more than likely will end up being a mutual parting of ways, because I don't know. I mean, can Mel Tucker come back? I mean, can you imagine Mel Tucker standing in front of his players?
No.
After this, could you imagine Mel Tucker standing in front of the media after this?
Or recruiting.
Going into someone's home. There's I think there's a lot of things that in reading his statement yesterday, this is more me reading the tea leaves. If he's not going to end up at the hearing, I mean, the only reason, because it's not technically a legal proceeding, the only reason he would end up at that hearing is if he wants to get another job in college football. I mean, he spent 10 years in the NFL. So you don't need to be at that hearing if you want to try and go work in the NFL again.
Chris, it's interesting, right? Coming on the heels of a top 25 recruiting class composite. The recruiting classes have been good, pretty familiar. They have been recruiting in the Omaha area in our own household. Like, what happened? Like how did we miss this under the guise of what the seemingly vibe was in terms of the culture that was being built in Michigan State?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this incident in particular, I mean, who would have known about the phone call? Two people.
Yeah.
The two parties on the phone.
100%.
And, unless one of those parties came forward, two people would have known about that phone call. And, it's pretty clear if you read the things that Brenda Tracy said, and, her being a prominent sexual assault victims advocate and, educator in terms of dealing with the aftermath of it. She basically in Kenny's story discussed, I don't want to say being kind of re-victimized, but more that it revived some of those past traumas. And who are you or we to kind of judge that if someone has gone through that?
Right.
So, I hear people question the timing of it. I heard people question, why did she wait? Why didn't she hang up? We've not been in that person's shoes. And I think that's an important piece of this. You cannot ascribe blame to someone who had been victim of something else, and what that situation, that you were working with someone that you trusted, that trusted you, and you felt violated. We can't, that's a line that if you're not the person that dealt with that and the trauma, I don't know if you could really ascribe blame. But I mean, the big thing here is, I mean, if you look at it, Mel Tucker's admitted it. He admitted it in the report when he was interviewed by investigators back in March. He admitted it again yesterday in his statement. Regardless, I mean, it's a lapse in judgment, because, and I've heard the phrase here, I mean, you're talking about someone who's supposed to be a leader of men who, regardless of his marital status, is still married. And this now becomes very, very public. That's, there's, and the details within, from the university standpoint are incredibly embarrassing.
Yeah.
The details based upon a lot of the slogans and phrasing that Mel Tucker has used over the last 4 years are exceptionally embarrassing. So, when you sit and think about it from everybody's standpoint, I mean, is there a chance that he could come back? If there is, it is the most minuscule possibility ever. And the admission itself, I think, pretty much draws the end to Mel Tucker's tenure. It's just a matter of when the I's and T's are dotted and crossed to focus on that contract and for Michigan State to try and get away from the rest of that 10-year, $95 million deal.
Chris Solari from the Detroit Free Press.
Unbelievable professionalism, Chris. That's good stuff, man. That's why you're one of the best at what you do in East Lansing.
I appreciate it, guys. It's been a rough one here, and we've gone through them, covering a lot of crazy things over the last few years. And this, I think, is going to linger for quite a while up here.
Chris, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, take care, guys.
The show will be back in 4 minutes. The show will be back in 3 minutes. The show will be back in 2 minutes. Hurrdat Sports presents The Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Welcome back to The Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. We are continuing on with hour number 1, talking to Bill Baker, the Northern Illinois University play-by-play guy. Bill, how are you this morning?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. This is my 44th year doing this, and I'm sort of semi-retired, if you know what I mean. And I'd forgotten that there was actually a 7:45 a.m. on the clock as well.
Well, we appreciate you sacrificing and getting up early for us to talk about a little Huskies football. Just start you off here with kind of how the season's gone so far. Obviously 1-1, get the big upset win over Boston College, but then have a disappointing loss to Southern Illinois last week. I guess just what's the tenor of the program right now?
Boy, you know what? I wish we knew. I think they wish they knew as well. I don't think anybody saw the Southern Illinois result coming. I mean, you know, it's a rivalry game. And there's one thing I always said, and I said it on the air, I've said it for years, when you get these FBS matchups versus the FCS, you can't overlook them. You just can't do it. These are guys, number one, every one of them to a man thinks they should be playing FBS football. And they've got a chip on their shoulder, and they want to prove it. Double that factor simply because it's a rivalry game. It's North versus South. You're both in the state of Illinois. You both recruit the Chicagoland very, very heavy. A lot of these guys know each other from back in high school or maybe previous stops along the way in college football. So you just can't overlook anybody. I don't know that NIU overlooked Southern. I think Southern came in. I thought they had a great game plan, quite frankly. And I thought that, you know, maybe the Huskies were still coming off of that high, the win at Boston College the week before. It's tough to say, but Southern Illinois won the game, and now you just simply have to move on. And when you look up, and there's Nebraska, you know, right ahead of you. So you've got to be able to turn what happened against Southern. Just got to turn it off. You got to get it out of your mind, because now you've got to get ready for the Cornhuskers. It's
interesting. Kind of 6 degrees of separation. Lombardi off to a little bit of I was almost going to say rocky start. A tough start with taking care of the football and less than 3 yards a carry running the ball. Where does this offense, outside of taking care of the football, need to start for you in order to be and kind of show the experience that you thought Lombardi could bring to the table coming back this year?
Well, I think it's got to start with the ground game. I mean, that's what NIU has built their program on over the years. They've had so many terrific people carry the football. Went through a bit of a crisis, or just a bit of a change, let's call it, with the transfer portal a year ago. Still have talent in the backfield. I mean, they pick up the kid from Iowa, Gavin Williams, who I think is going to be a solid back in the Mid-American Conference. And Ontario Brown has been with us for several years now, and he's your number one guy. But they've always built things around the ground game, and Rocky Lombardi's always been able to handle, you know, mixing the ground game with the passing department. You know, Rocky, I mean, it was on national TV, so I mean, he took a shot. I think he hit his hand on the helmet of one of the SIU defenders very early in the game, and was seen on the sideline. It looked as though they were almost trying to straighten the finger or maybe fix at this location. I don't know what it was, and we never had a chance to really talk to him. Whether or not that impeded him, I could not say, but he finished the game. He had the backup guy had to come in for the one series to finish off the one series once he got dinged a little bit, but he came back. It's you know, the guy hasn't played football for just about a year. He hasn't played football for just about a year. You can do what you want. He didn't do much at all he didn't do anything in the spring. I don't know if he did a whole heck of a lot in August. He was out there and he took his reps. But to be honest with you, I think he's still finding his way a little bit. He's getting his legs back underneath him. So we'll have to see.
Bill, I'm wondering what the, I guess, vibe is around head coach Thomas Hammock. They, before his tenure, had only missed a bowl game once in the last 10 years. They've missed 3 out of the first 4 under Coach Hammock, and is what has been a pretty up and down tenure for him. What is, I guess, just what's the general feeling around his coaching stint so far as he gets into year 5?
Well, you know, fans always have their opinions. You know, some are positive that I've read, some are negative that I've seen and talked to. But the bottom line is what the administration thinks. And I know that Sean T. Frazier, who's the director of athletics at NIU, is solidly behind Thomas Hammock, as I think he should be. He's a guy, he's an alum. He's very charismatic. What I really like about him is his coaching style. He's aggressive. He's a type of guy. He's a very likable guy. He'll go out. He'll be in the community, and he can be shopping for groceries, and he'll stop and spend 20 minutes and talk football with you. That's just the type of guy he is. I don't know that that there's a hot seat yet for Thomas Hammock. Maybe if things don't pan out this year, that might begin to change. It's not my decision, but for the moment, I think he's pretty solid at NIU.
So, listen, one of the bright spots. I mean, this D line is pretty good. Obviously, I used to spend a lot of time around Mr. Haberman. He's from the high school that I coach, and kind of well aware how you guys like to play defense. Is that where it has to start if you're going to bring something portable with you on the road to Lincoln?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's pretty much what kept us in the game. What got us the win, I think, was the defense just as much as anything else out of Boston College. You got a couple of individuals. I mean, you got a pair of really nice defensive ends in Ray Thomas and Roy Williams. James Esther is just a beast up in the middle. Linebackers changed a little bit. One of the linebackers had been a defensive back. That's Jaden Goff, and they moved him up a little bit. And then you've got your defensive secondary. C.J. Brown is going to be all MAC. I mean,
he's got to be. He's leading you guys in tackles, isn't he? He's everywhere.
Yes, he is. Yeah, and that's pretty much as expected. That was the talk in the offseason, how they were going to build that defensive secondary around him. I mean, let's look at the Southern game. This is a club that scored 40-some-odd points the week before and had been rated 25th in the country coming in. They had a solid offensive line. They've got a couple of good running backs, some decent receivers. In fact, they had 2 1,000-yard rushers in their backfield. And yet, I mean, you lost the game. It was 14-11. But the point is, NIU's defense held them to, 200-some-odd yards and only the 14 points. And going out to Boston College, it was a late round. They had Boston College throttled, I thought, through a good 3.5 quarters of that game. Circumstances kind of let Boston College back into it. They took advantage of some opportunities, but then they tightened things in the overtime and allowed only the field goal. So yeah, I think everybody's been happy with what the defense has done, and certainly you're going to have to find your opportunities and then take advantage of them every time you do find them going into a place like Nebraska. But it's the defense, I think, is going to have to give you those opportunities.
Bill, we've got a couple minutes left here with you, and I'm curious, the two offensive strategies from game 1 to game 2 for Northern Illinois have been pretty different. Game 1, really balanced, really committed to running the football, even though you're not getting a ton of chunk plays there. Game 2, you end up with Rocky Lombardi throwing it almost 40 times, almost for 300 yards, but that comes with the 3 interceptions, and the run game never really gets going in that one. If Northern Illinois had their choice, which type of style are they really more comfortable with, and they're trying to get their offensive identity to be?
I think they're more comfortable with being able to run the football. Yeah. And I take my hat off to Southern because that's the one thing they did. They knew that they had to stop the run. They wanted to put the ball in the air with Rocky Lombardi, and they did exactly that. And then they were able to take advantage of it. You know, they did this too with just a 3-man rush all day long. So here's the thing about Southern too. Their head coach Nick Hill, the last time these two teams played in DeKalb was way back in 2007, and Southern came in. Nick Hill at that time was their quarterback, and Nick Hill at that time, the last couple of minutes of the game, rallied Southern for a couple of touchdowns to win that contest. So they won back-to-back games in DeKalb. Now, Nick Hill, who better now as a head coach to take a club and tell them how they need to play and what they need to do to win a game at a venue like NIU. And that's exactly what he did with his club. He talked about it later on. He said, I had a pretty good idea exactly how we had to approach this game. And they approach it by taking away the run. NIU loves to run. They set things up with the run. Thomas Hammock will tell you the Huskies play complementary football. They took one half of that away the other day. And but given the choice, NIU would love to keep the ball on the ground.
Bill Baker, play-by-play voice for Northern Illinois football. Bill, we appreciate your time. Good luck this weekend.
Looking forward to seeing you Saturday night, Bill. Appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely, guys. Take care. Best of luck just as soon as we get out of town, okay?
Nice. That's Bill Baker, play-by-play voice for Northern Illinois football.
They'll be right next to our booth.
This one's going to be pretty interesting.
I wonder how much, Nebraskans sometimes are very good at connecting history and overlapping. And you heard Coach Rule yesterday say, I'm 0-2. I'm not responsible for it. Even though we'd like to, I kept seeing that on Twitter yesterday, right? Oh, man, years of this and years of this. And I get the fans' perspective that they're just kind of tired of seeing the same thing. But you do have to separate a new regime.
Yeah.
I wonder if Northern Illinois will separate a new regime, because the last time they were here, remember the famous pick six, Nebraska's driving, and all of a sudden they go the other way. And
that was what, 2017?
Yeah, it's like
with
game on.
Riley?
Yeah.
Well, Tanner Lee did love throwing him some pick sixes. That was he loved touchdown passes no matter who they were going to.
Hey, why are you bringing up old stuff?
I'm just saying. That's the last time they were here. No, we will get back into we are going to talk about the NFL.
Yeah.
Because you got us off topic last time. I was trying to keep us on the track.
Hey, darn that. We got to get to the press conference yesterday. Can you still win the press conference now?
He's sure trying. We've got more of Benning and Lulla coming up next.
We will be back in 4 minutes. We will be back in 3 minutes.
Low snap.
We will be back in 2 minutes. We will be back in 1 minute. We will be back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Low snap. And getting away, a line drive kick is Sam Martin. Gibson runs under it at the Jet 35. Starts to his left, gets to the 40, turns the corner at the 45, 50. Blockers in front at the 40, at the Bills 30, inside the 20. Stunner steps to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown! And it's a Jet touchdown! This game is over!
Here we go, hour number 2 on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. We just talked to Chris Solari and Bill Baker on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline in hour 1. Warhorse Sportsbooks in Lincoln, Nebraska, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You must place those bets in person at the Warhorse Sportsbook. There's plenty of kiosks, sportsbook tellers to take your wagers, or little easy shortcut you can take here. Get the Warhorse Casino app, view your live odds, build your bets anywhere, then go to the casino, scan the QR code, and place your wager in person. Straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game bets, all accepted. Visit warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get that Warhorse Casino app for details and full list of house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. There was, man, there's still a lot to get to.
Let me
Let's go back to the NFL, because since you got us,
I felt a little peer pressure. You don't let me press you into going back to the NFL. Right?
No, I want to talk about the NFL because I do think there's a lot of interesting things that happened, and I'm sure we'll get back into Nebraska football with Schaefer and over the course of the next couple hours here, but I do feel like if we don't talk about the NFL now, we aren't going to get to it ever. So let's try and stay focused here for a minute.
Yes, it just so happens to be that I am the one guy of the crew whose team did not win.
Well, listen, I wasn't going to bring it up. I was going to talk about maybe Eagles and Patriots, which I thought was a weird game.
It really was.
I kind of, if you recall, thought the Eagles might be a regression candidate.
Yeah, me too. And I told you that I felt like the Patriots were going to win that game outright.
I did too. I really did.
That what happened.
And if you take away that weird deflected pick six, we're gonna have a whole different game here.
Yeah. I'm just not that dude.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying that the Patriots would have won.
Can I why do people do that though?
Because it's easy.
Okay. Because I hear that a lot. Like if you take away.
Right. So I think here's what I'm trying to do at least. Okay. Because I understand the butterfly effect. I understand, hey, this happened. It was real. We saw it. You can't just ignore it. What I'm trying to find out is.
It depends on how
on what it is. So like you were having an argument on Twitter over the weekend with somebody who was saying, hey, if you take away Sims,
so I wasn't arguing with Ryan. I just don't understand. So this is how I look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're like you were describing Millard South a couple weeks ago, the double deflection, Feller not being called down.
Yeah. Then the weird fumble pick six right in front of the end zone.
Okay.
Like the pick six before.
So if there are multiple things that don't normally happen.
Sure.
Okay. I'll entertain some of that. But I think his point was, I don't know if it was just like real linear, like, well, sans the one run.
He wasn't consistently gaining good yardage.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do when I do that isn't trying to do revisionist history.
So, and my point to that was, yeah, but you can't really do that because that play was well executed.
Yeah, that wasn't a fluky play. That wasn't like he rolled off of a pile.
Yeah, it was. So why would I take that out?
Right. So that to me is different than a ball off the hands, pick six interception, right? Like right in the receiver's hands, like we saw with Patrick Mahomes on Thursday night. The fact that ends up being a pick six for him is mind-boggling, right? But what I'm trying to do is not to change the.
Should I take out Breece Hall's 83-yard run?
No, because again, that was well executed.
That was blocked pretty well.
Yeah, it was a well executed run and play.
But if I do take out Breece Hall's 83-yard run,
the rest of his numbers are not impressive.
Not at all.
What I'm trying to do when I
I don't do that
is not to say, oh, this guy played well or didn't play well, is because some of those guys are boom or bust type guys anyway. That's kind of the nature is you kind of throw a couple jabs out there like the Jeff Sims runs. You're throwing a couple jabs out there. He gets 3, he gets 4, he gets whatever. And then you're kind of waiting for one to break. That's part of the process, right? Is that's what you're setting them up for a big hit.
For sure.
What I'm trying to do isn't to renegotiate results or anything like that. It's to see, okay, who actually played better in this game? I get that the Patriots still lost. I get that the Eagles are still 1-0 and, Eagles fans are probably still flying high. But when I watch that game, I think that the Patriots for most of that game played better than Philadelphia did.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say, if you take out the Darius Slay pick 6, I'm not saying, hey, let's take that out. All of a sudden 25 minus 7 is 18 and boom, the Patriots won the game. What I'm saying is
ran the ball for roughly the same YPCs. Mac Jones outplayed Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
well, so at least a better QBR and a better rating.
And I thought he looked. I mean, honestly, I just watching it, I thought he looked better. Looked more comfortable. Looked like he was operating at a higher level.
I understand.
So when I'm doing that, it's not, hey, you just take this away and boom, Patriots are 1-0. It's, hey, if you look at the overall flow of the game, that is an outlier play that it changed the result because it didn't necessarily reflect how the rest of the game was going. That's what I mean when I say that. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
That's something you could maybe do against Minnesota. You certainly couldn't do it against Colorado, for example, because there was too many of them, right? There were too many one-offs, quote unquote. Anything else from the
like a guy crossing the field on an over route that goes unimpeded?
Yeah.
Or a guy looking in the backfield on a
there's a couple of them
on a max pressure.
Yeah, so Tommy Hill and then Gifford got beat down. Which that's a tough cover for Gifford is to follow.
The trail.
Travis Hunter.
That's too
like
long.
That's a really long time and a really difficult.
By the way, though, how good was that throw?
Really, really good because Gifford actually wasn't even in that bad a position.
Oh.
Like it was a really tough task to give him, and it was still a really good throw.
Yeah.
It required a really good throw.
Singleton on a similar one where he led him into the open space. Even the over route.
No, Shadur's legit.
Even the over route.
Did you see how many defenders were there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yes, he was just behind them.
He dropped that in the bucket
but
because he anticipated where
yeah.
that thing was going. You look at the replay and you're like, well, why didn't they just jump and get that?
It's because it was a really good throw.
And that ball was well in the air before they were cognizant. He put that where his guy was going.
And even on the other touchdown pass was a shorter touchdown pass. They were in the red zone.
Where Singleton was trailing the crossing route?
Yes, but he had coverage in front. He had Singleton trailing, and then he had a guy in front of him as well. And Shadur just layered that ball in there.
He's really good.
Yeah, and honestly, Shadur is the difference between Minnesota and Colorado, basically. Like, you can have Travis Hunter, you can have Dylan Edwards, whatever. Shadur is the difference there. Caliac Manis to Shadur, that is the difference between 13-10. Nebraska probably should have won that game, and 36-14. Nebraska maybe could have won that if they played perfect football.
Do you wonder what happens if Nebraska would have got the lead?
I do.
Yeah, me too.
I also just wonder what happens if Nebraska feels comfortable with executing some of the simple stuff, right? Because Nebraska was doing what they wanted to do. I mean, 13-7 with less over halfway through the third quarter, Nebraska was running the ball.
And remember, Colorado's first 24 plays went for 50 yards.
Right. Nebraska was running the ball well. They shouldn't have even had the 13 points because Nebraska handed 10 of them to them, right? This was
literally, yeah.
I mean, yeah, literally 10 points came directly off turnovers.
Literally.
You had the Sims pick. The next play is that drag route you're talking about that ended up being a really good throw. And you have the field goal off of one of the fumbles. And so Nebraska was doing almost everything right through 2.5 quarters in terms of playing that game in a way that was winnable, right? The problem was once you get behind 20-7 and you're almost to the end of the third quarter, then you're down 23-7 and you're at the end of the third quarter, you can't continue to play that way. You run out of time, especially with the new clock rules, right?
Yeah.
And so that was going to get away from Nebraska when they didn't score basically immediately at 23-7. They just weren't going to be able to continue to play that way.
Yeah.
And so you can see a path to victory for Nebraska from Colorado, but that I don't know that we're giving Shooter Sanders maybe enough credit because we've been so focused on Jeff Sims, right? Yeah, it's really easy to point out, like, okay.
That's weird how this morphed from Mac Jones and Jalen Hurts to Shedeur and Jeff Sims. But to get it back to the NFL,
yeah.
Could you believe that Josh Allen just didn't fall on the drop of the bobbled snap?
You text me that. So I actually do want to talk about this, okay?
Were you mad at me?
No, I wasn't mad at you. I was just like,
you say, I feel like he's being snarky. No, I'm just saying, like.
No, so here, I have a real question about this. I'm not being snarky because my assumption is, because I never played football at any level that whatever. Like, so my question is.
That doesn't disqualify you, by the way.
No, but I there's certain things that I just don't know because I don't know, right?
Understood.
So I assume you teach guys what to do when the ball's on the ground, right?
Yes.
What do you teach? Like a genuine question, not trying to set you up.
To get on the ball.
To fall on the ball, right?
Yeah.
I get it's not easy. Like I get it's not easy to do all the time, right?
Do you know who we never?
The quarterback.
The quarterback.
Because you don't want him to break his hand or something, right?
Correct.
Okay, I get that. But do you want him like reaching his hand in there anyway?
So sometimes it's even so bad if it happens in practice. I know that I've said, hey, listen, you're not a quarterback. Get on the ground.
Fair.
Right? So I'm guilty. I mean, full disclosure, usually things that I say have a backstory.
Sure.
Right? I'm not just pulling them out of my rear end.
Yeah.
That's why I'm telling you, like quarterbacks, I couldn't believe yesterday in the presser that Coach Rule talked about, well, how often.
Not practicing falling on the ball.
Right. Because coaches, what you really don't want to happen, it's not the broken hand. It's to get caught lock-legged or lock-kneed and have a guy roll into your legs.
Okay.
That's really what happens.
Okay.
So quarterbacks they just don't do it. But I couldn't believe.
Is that much different? Like, it seems like it would be safer from a leg standpoint to dive on the ball where your legs are not still planted in the ground than it is to
reach down and
reach. Because that's where you're going to get rolled up on is when you're reaching for something. So that's where I'm having a hard time understanding what's taught versus what's expected versus what's natural.
So we had a play in our youth football game Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
It was a low punt. Like I don't think he blocked it. It would have like hit him in his hip. But I mean, we had a kid that was kind of bull rushing and punt hit him like it hit him. And he now this is a big cock-strong kid, right? He runs and he dives on the ball. Mm-hmm. And I looked at our staff and I was like, boy, that is some football awareness. I want to see if it's fluky or not.
Mm-hmm.
So when he comes over to the bench, I go, hey, I said, why'd you just fall on that ball? And he said, because I knew that I touched it and I didn't want them to pick it up. I was going to try to scoop it, but I was like, nah, it's just lying there. Like, that's what he said. And I wanted to hug him, right? Because it's like just the purity of what he said.
Yeah.
And he's a football head, right? But it's just not natural. I know you think it is.
No, I don't think it is, but I think it should be taught.
No, I understand.
Like, it's not natural. And listen, I'm coming this from a basketball perspective.
That's
right?
probably why. Well, how many times do you say coaches get to the floor? Basketball coaches say it all the time, get to the floor.
That's what I mean. But that's what is taught, right? So you can teach guys.
Well, why doesn't it happen more? Why do we have games where we say, he won't even get to the floor? 50-50 ball, he won't even get to the floor.
Because it hurts to dive on a wood floor.
Oh, God.
It does. Like, that's why I'm convinced that's why basketball players don't do it. Because it doesn't feel good.
I think it's a cultural thing. It hurts to dive on the wood floor.
I mean, that's what I always assumed when my players wouldn't dive on the floor.
Hear the screeching of flesh against.
Yeah, like you get like a wood burn. That sucks.
Oh gosh.
I just assumed that's why they never did it, or why they didn't like to do it.
Hey, well,
and you had to instill.
I tell you what, nothing beats diving on the football field with pads on and getting.
I'm not saying it feels good, but I still taught them to do it, even though they didn't want to.
I'm with you.
So I don't so here's where my simple football mind goes to is possession is more important than the single play.
You did. But see, the reality of it is we always give these practical terms to the outside looking in. Like it's like, that's really how it goes down. Like we say, why didn't you just tackle the guy? Or why didn't we just do this?
No,
or
that's different.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. It's not instinctive to fall on the ball on the ground unless you practice it.
But you're telling me you do practice it.
We don't practice it. He's telling you they don't practice it enough. Situationally,
sure.
Like he's owning when a ball is on the when a snap is dropped.
But he's owning
He's admitting what they tell him. Hey man, get away from it.
Right. But he's also owning that he needs to teach the quarterbacks in that situation to fall on the ball.
100%. Do you know what that
so
tells
I'm not
no,
wrong in what he should have done.
You're wrong in the fact that, number one, they don't teach it, so he doesn't instinctively know it. And if it was instinctively done, you wouldn't have to teach it.
I'm not telling you that it's instinctive. I'm telling you that's what should have happened.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's just first nature.
So even yesterday when you and I were talking about this, I said, just take note on how often it really happens from a quarterback.
I'm not telling you what happens.
And we got a beautiful example.
I'm trying to tell you what should happen.
No, I get it.
That's all.
Do you know what I'm afraid to say in sports a lot?
What's that?
Should.
Okay.
Because that's why you play it, right?
I
because
understand.
of human error. That's what makes it interesting.
But that is I get that you have to rewire your brain, especially as a quarterback who's taught to stay away from the pile, right?
Yeah.
But am I crazy to think if you're worried?
Some schools are really good at it. Like I've seen some practices where they do a bad snap drill.
Yeah.
Some schools are really good at it. But guess what? When they do it, they do it in QB individual. They don't do it in team.
That's fine
because you don't want to practice bad habits.
I understand that, but if that's something that some teams do, and you're admitting that that's probably the ideal way to handle it is to fall on the football. I don't even know what we're arguing about here. I'm not saying it's an instinct that makes sense because I get what Coach Rule said.
So
we teach him to get away from the ball.
So your point yesterday was, man, I don't know why they don't coach it more just to fall on the ball. Because if you would have said that, you'd have shut me up right away. But that's not what you're saying.
I don't think I had the terms to put it in that way. But
that's not that hard. You could have just said that.
No, but my brain didn't process it that way.
You're still mad at Sam.
Yeah, I was a little flustered about Sam telling me that he's doing the backup quarterback dirty. I asked you off air, okay? I go,
what'd you ask me?
I go, hey, if you're the backup,
do
you care how your opportunity comes? What did you say?
Heck no. So
why are you doing Heinrich Harburg dirty for getting him in the game? What does he care the reason?
No, and I'm with you.
Because
I knew when
he said that, I got riled up.
Yeah, you could barely sit in your seat.
Because first of all, we're not talking about a Bo Davis in 2004 situation here where the dude
going to Lubbock.
So the dude had like 3 snaps of practice ever, was a nobody recruit from nowhere.
Why are you bringing up old
Is that where the 637 text came from Matt last night that says you've been heated all day?
Yes.
Yeah, he was still mad. I put you on that.
Yeah, we're both.
Oh,
because no,
I've been looking forward to the 9:47 p.m. conversation since last night.
This isn't.
I wasn't poking him. I just was giving an example. Yet another of how impractical that thought process was real time.
Quote, I know
he just was going to try to scoop it to himself.
Oh, and look how well that worked.
So you know what's funny though, and we got to get to Ronald and Kurt here real quick. But you know what's funny? I felt like it was interesting that Coach Rule had a sense enough to address Sims not
falling on the ball.
When I was joking that seemed to have been a thing on the internet, I wasn't like super serious, but somehow it made its way.
I mean, I think it was a talking
to where
point.
He had to address it.
Or maybe
and then he goes into the Cam Newton deal.
Or maybe he just understands, like, yeah, we'd like you to fall on the ball there. Well, I mean, that's not crazy.
I'm just letting you know I can handle your delivery, okay? You can keep giving it to me like that. I can take it.
Let's get to the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Ronald is on line 1. Ronald, what do you got for us?
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, we're not going to fight, Ronald. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Hey, but you know what? I agree with Mr. Lulla, Damon. I agree
That's
with
all.
the young
Listen,
man.
I get it. I get it. I get it.
And hey, I'm telling you, the first one to the ground or whatever else. I mean, you know, but I did want to share a couple points.
Okay.
One was that, I mean, I was at the game, and it's like thing with love him or hate him. I mean, I love Deion. I love Deion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a Husker through and through though, and a realist. But we have individuals in place, presidents, congressmen, things of that nature, and been to a number of cities just to see cause and effect. Right.
Mm-hmm.
This man is affecting the economy, and that's America's bottom line. Because no matter what we're doing, if the economy and people's pockets aren't being niched the right way,
mm-hmm.
this dude is affecting their economy. And I'm like, that hidden messages, things of that nature, they don't talk about that. They talk about the swag and whatever else and ways to just throw darts or whatever. But man, he's affecting their economy, and that's a great thing that people don't even talk about.
Right, right.
You know,
he's gonna be able to pay for his own salary.
Yeah,
I mean that, right? Because
they had to raise money.
I don't know if all that money was available at the time.
They said it wasn't. I mean,
Right. Question: does our quarterback have more time in the pocket this year or last year? I want to hear your response because I gotta say.
First blush, I say more time.
Yeah, I want to say more, but it feels like the play calls are so different. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, that's tough. At first blush, I say he's had more time.
Absolutely. So, you know, Casey's gone or whatever, but you know, I don't know what happened. Was he afraid to get tackled in practice or whatever? I don't know. But if you take the capacity to scan
mm-hmm.
and make a decision. You know, I know the plays are coming in late, which I don't want to get into.
Hey, but, that was weird how he kind of addressed that, right? Like they got to get better. They got to get better too.
We went through a spring. You know, that's the trial period, and now the summer, whatever.
And then he low key said, "You know what I think, Lord, I love about the defense is their efficient communication on the sidelines." I was like, ooh. I think he's starting with the adults.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he needs to leave the defense alone. Talking about they need to fix the thing. Look, the defense is fine.
Yeah.
But as far as the decision making and getting to what you want to do, I mean, I know if I'm about to eat something, I'm gonna eat that. I mean, I don't need to think about it and whatever else. But the time that he's had, unfortunately, I know he's a young man. I'm not gonna bash him, but I would take Casey. I would take Casey right now. And I would take Casey 10 times over because the time that he had, the way he had to haul tail quickly.
Ronald, I said this to Ravi earlier, and I know you're Team Ravi this morning. It's all good. We're still boys. But you don't get that lifestyle without him in it, which means if you want to replace Casey with Jeff, you don't get the same offensive concepts.
Oh no, my man! You know what? We may not get. And I hear the music, but hey, we may not get the same offensive concept. But you know what? We may not need them either, bro. Hey, I love y'all. Have a good one.
Appreciate it, Ronald.
I see you, Kurt.
Oh, you feel good because he was Team Ravi.
That's right. Everybody, Team Ravi, call the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876. Kurt, hang on that line. We'll grab you when we come back here on Benning and Lulla.
We'll be right back in 5 minutes. We'll be right back in 4 minutes. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We'll be right back in 1 minute. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
On game days or just in general? I'll tell you this. There's sometimes, like, you know, we work late or whatever. I walk out of the football offices on the concourse and I make a left. I love to walk down and see the facade of the original Memorial Stadium. And I love to look at the team pictures, you know, of like 19, whatever. You ever go with Sat sometime? Like there's one gentleman who's in like a bunch of pictures in a row. We're not really sure who he is. We've asked people. But he looks like the most interesting man. If you go see, if I'm ever walking with you, I'll show you guys. But, and again, that's why I'm saying what I'm saying right now in the way that I'm saying it, because I want our players to hear it. There's a right way and a wrong way to do this. And what it means to be at the University of Nebraska, the history, the tradition, like we have to do everything in accordance to the way this place was built. It was built on a solid foundation. And so that facade still stands like that. The original stadium still stands. The original seals are still there. And so, so I love college football. Like I love being on game day. I don't really pay attention to it. Like, Keith asked me about the Flatirons. I was like, I didn't even notice. Like, but being at Memorial Stadium and coming here the first time, was this. I mean, not in this job, you don't get to go visit places very often. We came here and you pull in and you see PBA and you see Memorial Stadium, you see the city of Lincoln, and you're like, man, this is a special place.
Halfway through the show on a Tuesday on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi, Lulla. I want to tell you about our friends at Pratt Dental. Dr. Pratt is the only dentist in Nebraska that provides the BioClear method, located in North Platte. The BioClear method and modern smile design can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments. Pratt Dental, creating healthy smiles. Give them a call at 308-221-2800. Before DB and I start fighting again, let's get to our friend.
Every day we do.
By the way, can I say something about that clip that I just played?
Hey, by the way, it's your show. You say what you want to say.
It's not my show.
It is your show.
I apologize because I didn't play the right one. That's not what you wanted. But when we were listening to that clip,
listen, I wanted to say something to him. But if you guys keep apologizing for your poor behavior, I'm going to get upset. You don't have to. If you just want to be naughty kids, you don't have to explain things to me. I get it.
I saw
bad kids.
I saw somebody earlier going through the comments, and they didn't like that question was asked. I want to know what do you want? What do you want asked? Somebody on the YouTube comments.
Dude, everybody's mad about everything. It's like it's just how it goes when you're not winning.
He went 30 minutes yesterday.
I'm just mad about the one thing.
Hey, you could tell, but
minutes.
My man had to get some things off his chest.
Yeah,
that's what you get when you hired me.
That's I think aggravated as I've seen him.
So I think this. So there's only one thing that I know that really bugs him is when you question his integrity.
Yeah, and that seems
outside of that, he was cool, right? Like he's pretty cool. Like he hung up. We got it. Well, I don't know if we got it. We had a misunderstanding, and I think. This is before I knew. I'll just tell this real quick.
Yeah,
story.
Go for it.
So we got into it, like pretty good.
When was this?
This was in the summer, like June or July.
Okay.
And this is actually how I found out my emojis don't work.
Okay.
God is my witness. I'm telling you right now. So. I asked him if he had a conversation, and he said he didn't. And I said something about what was insinuated in said conversation, and I gave the smiling face emojis. I didn't think anything of it, and he said, "What what's your what's going on? Like." I'll call you in a bit. So the show was going on, so I didn't answer. He called again, and so I commercial break. I think I may have missed the segment. I don't know how this happens with me, but like he said some things. I was like, man, where are we? I said, where are we going with this? Like that's what I said, and so we ended the conversation, and. Basically, short story long, my emojis look like question marks. So even though I'm laughing,
it didn't come across that way.
It comes across like I'm like question mark, like what are you talking about? Right? You know what I mean? And so I did it, and it just so happens. First, that's why you don't talk to coaches, right? Don't try to do any homework. It just so happens it was timely when the question marks. So, like I think he took umbrage of whether I thought he was telling me the truth or not.
Oh, okay.
And he was pissed.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
And so I used an emoji, and I asked my buddy. I said, "What do these show up as?" It's like question marks. So I tried another one, question mark. So I tried another one, question mark. I was like, oh.
So he took it an entirely different way than it was intended.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's how I figured out. So I that's why I know like that gets his that's
Sure.
why he bristled up yesterday.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what the Sanderses are sort of taking a shot at. It is what it is, right? As you mentioned,
does it always have to be something with people? Like, why
with some people?
I can't get over
with
that,
some
man.
people, it's always something, right?
Like just unnecessarily. Like, I mean, social media is a lot like that. Like you could say, hey man, it's a pretty blue sky out. Maybe for you, it's like save it. Like you don't have to share that.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Like,
well, that's the problem with social media is you have to share everything, right? Like that's kind of the.
It's like I don't know. It's just the pound of flesh thing kind of rubs me the wrong way.
See, you keep saying that. You keep saying the pound of flesh thing.
Yeah.
I don't know where is that coming from.
People just want it. Like
from Sims, from Rule Who?
Just in general, like just a general thing. And I know you're kind of in your feels because you think I'm talking to you, but I'm not. I don't think you wanted Jeff Sims benched. I think you were questioning whether, or maybe you did. I don't know. Because, I mean, full disclosure, you never asked me. I would have gotten Harburg at least a couple of series in that game.
Right.
But that wasn't what the exercise was. But I can say that out loud because I was saying it real time. I was like, you kind of have to settle him down.
Right. It seemed like
so he could see some things because he was starting to squeeze tighter.
Yes.
Right. So, like, but that wasn't what yesterday was about. I was trying to give you what I think they're thinking.
Sure.
And turns out that's a lot of what they were thinking. And I also think the other thing is, and I said this to a buddy yesterday, at some point we have to understand that they don't, running backs and quarterbacks and defensive backs, and not everybody else is treated the same.
And I get that.
I mean, we've had this conversation forever. And it's a big severism. Like, he's one of those guys that has always said that. And sometimes I subscribe to it, sometimes I don't. It just depends on what I'm talking about. But his general rule of premises is you have to treat quarterbacks differently. And they 100% absolutely are.
Well, and I totally understand that. And I was trying to put it in sort of terms that.
And he's not going to lose the locker room.
That I've got a better.
I'm certain about that as well.
And that's fine. And if you have that level of trust and that level of confidence in your locker room, then you have more leeway in terms of treating a quarterback differently, right? Like if you're treating somebody differently and they don't trust you, it goes a lot worse.
Yeah. Or like I said, like on the optics, and I hate this word. The optics of it are, well, he's going to lose this, or it's going to happen because this is versus this. And I said, well, what if it's not that linear?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Grant's stimuli or what he's doing or how he reacted or whatever may be completely different than Jeff Sims.
Sure.
Maybe Grant knows something ahead of time that Sims isn't processing real time. I think to make the linear comparison without knowing anything about what's going on in that locker room and using terms like hypocrite or losing the locker room, all these made up narratives over the weekend just because we're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know enough to say that.
I think there were three things for me that would have.
And now you get each talking down to us fans. And typically, if like what I say bothers you, I am probably talking to you. But it's not to talk down. Like it doesn't move my needle a ton that people think differently. I just like to know why.
Yeah, and
which, by the way, he dropped yesterday.
What did?
I know the what.
Yeah.
The question is why.
Which I think we maybe said that word for word yesterday on the show.
It's just how higher level thinkers process.
So we'll get to this here after the break, but there were kind of three facets of I think Jeff Sims need to sit down, at least in my head. Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to go through those with you because I think some of them may be valid and some may be less valid, but we can get to that coming up here on Benning and Lulla.
We will be back in 4 minutes. We will be back in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
We will be back in 2 minutes. We will be back in 1 minute. We will be back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, we called a couple of them in this game, and they just played kind of off of us. And one, he turned and found Borkature, and Borkature got a first down. We called some play action plays in this game, and they pressured us and they blitzed, and the quarterback had to get outside. One, he scrambled and hit Billy. So I would say we have to be a little bit more aggressive, probably pushing the ball down the field. But at the same time, when we call them, we have to execute them a little bit better. So to me, I think several things can be true. The turnovers are one thing, and that's so obvious that we all know it. But then kind of what you're saying, some of the other explosive plays, when we're running the ball, kind of the way at times we're hit, we just need an explosive play off of that. And so, Marcus to me, it looks like he's rounding in, he didn't practice all training camp, with first the hand, then the knee. Marcus looks like he's coming around. Really would like to see Jalen and Malachi kind of come around this week. We're playing them, so it's their time to go. And but I'd like to see us be a little more aggressive in those areas.
We're back on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi, Lulla, and we're brought to you by Rockbrook Camera. Our friends are located at 168th and Center in Omaha and 70th and Pioneer in Lincoln, or they're always available online at rockbrookcamera.com. You can get free shipping on cameras and lenses for purchases over $199. At Rockbrook Camera, they're not just trying to sell you a camera. They're trying to help make you the best photographer you want to be, and whatever that means for you. They've got support after the sale. They've got the latest technology in
Lord
cameras.
knows I need it.
How does this work? You can trade in your old gear or you can rent some gear if it's just temporary or you want to try some things out. They've got you covered at Rockbrook Camera.
I turned your boy Oklahoma Tyler onto Rockbrook Camera. He got his wife a nice lens.
Yeah? I was hanging out with Oklahoma Tyler basically all second half on Friday.
Yeah, I saw you meatheads walking around, bullying the rest of the media. So you know what's fun? You know what I originally was kind of, I said, you got to stop listening to like bad narratives. The whole separation thing. Did we kind of get that addressed yesterday?
Yeah, I thought so.
They just need more separation. Nah, man, these guys are open.
Some of those guys are getting open. Especially
you need better execution.
Especially against Colorado.
Yeah,
I thought the separation I thought the narrative was not totally out of line against Minnesota. I didn't think a ton of guys were open, although some were that were missed.
Yeah.
Colorado, I thought guys were open a lot.
Yeah, it's like, what are you like? Because they're not getting big plays, do you think they're not getting open? Because guys are open.
Yeah, they're especially against Colorado. I thought a lot of guys were open.
All right, I just wanted to have people stop saying.
Have
that.
a little,
like what are you watching?
Listen, you got a radio show. You got to get your feelings out. I understand.
I'm in my feelings.
Well, we've got JB on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. Let's see if JB's in his feelings about what type of quarterback Nebraska needs. What do you got, JB?
Yeah, that's my question. Is in the off season, new coaching staff. We've got a 3-3-5 defense. I kind of understand and knew what to expect going into the season. With the offense and the quarterback position, at least from what I saw, there wasn't a lot of. I mean, you kind of had an idea what they wanted to do, but I guess my question is just do you guys know or have a feel of ideally what kind of quarterback they want? Is there a comp in the NFL just to make it simple? Do they want a little bit runner but can also throw?
I think they want a pass first dual threat quarterback.
Somebody that, So, and there's a difference there, right?
Yes.
Sims is probably a run first dual threat.
Yes. I think they want a pass first mobile quarterback.
Who's a good example of that in the NFL?
Because all their shots that they take, typically they want to come off, or right now have to come off of run action because I just don't think they love just the straight drop back passing game. Now they have to protect it better, JB. But I think, I truly think they want a pass first dual threat guy. Now, who would that be?
Who's a good example of that in the NFL?
I don't know, but I have one at my high school.
What about Brock Purdy, who maybe he's not a full dual threat, but moves pretty well?
Yeah.
But pass first?
Yeah.
You think they would take? I mean, obviously Brock Purdy's playing well, but somebody in that mold.
Yeah, maybe a Ritter.
That's why I asked.
Like Ritter.
Oh, Desmond Ritter. Yeah, okay, for Cincinnati. Well, Bearcats now.
So Atlanta.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody like that.
Thank you. I still after 2 games, I don't really have a feel for exactly what they want to do on offense. I mean, the first game was pretty quarterback run heavy. The next game was a little different. I mean, the games dictate what they're going to do, but I still after 2 games don't have a great feel for what the identity of what their offense is going to be. So,
JB, that's a fantastic point. So if you knew the quarterback skill sets, you think you'd have a better idea of what the offense is, right?
100%. That's why I asked.
Yeah. That's a good point. I appreciate the call, JB. I mean, it's clear that's a good call, right?
So let me ask you this.
Do you remember when I used to say I didn't understand why they had so many different types of quarterbacks on their roster?
With the last half?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you had run first, you had sort of run only, you had some pass.
But then you had
Torres, and then you had Torres who's a straight drop back passer.
Casey, right?
Yeah.
So it's
what exactly do you want here?
What do you want here?
Let me ask you this and see if there's any validity to it.
Okay, go.
Is there a chance that Matt Rule, when he was looking for a transfer quarterback, was less worried about their on-field skill set and more concerned about what they were bringing to his locker room?
You asked me the same question last year, Eric.
He did intimate that last 2 segments ago. Do I have to say yes or no?
No, you can elaborate if you'd like. I mean, I think there's probably a minimum skill set qualification that he was looking for.
But
outside of that,
simply for the sake of time, I'll say yes.
Okay, because I think that would make, if you take that as the premise, I think that makes everything else make more sense.
Yeah, I think they were very careful about who they brought onto their campus.
Because if you're handpicking a guy,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're handpicking a guy, which they seem to have done with Sims, But there's obvious, I mean, listen, I'm sure they watched the Georgia Tech tape. I'm sure they knew his physical on-field limitations, right? And you handpick him anyway. There's basically, in my mind, one of two things going on there. You became enamored with the physical skills and you talked yourself into, or were convicted into believing you could coach that out of him, the bad habits, right? Or you saw a baseline level of physical abilities, but you were enamored with what he brought to your locker room. To me, those are the two options. If it's true that they handpicked Jeff Sims, which I think it is.
Yeah. And I think they liked his learning acumen.
Sure. I mean, he went to Georgia Tech. He's a smart kid.
Yeah, there's something to that.
So I wanted to get to there were three, because we talked about maybe sitting Jeff Sims down, and you volunteered that in game on Colorado, you probably would have sat him for a couple series.
Yes.
There were basically three things I was looking at when I was sort of talking about, hey, maybe we set Jeff Sims down. And to be clear, I look at it from a much more like a basketball perspective, right, than most football people do. I look at it from like, hey, if my point guard's really having a hard time running my offense and he's turning the ball over a ton, it's okay to sit him for a few minutes, let him calm down, let him see things for a second, put your backup in, and then bring your point guard back in the game when you feel confident that he's ready. That doesn't happen as much in football, especially at the quarterback position. But in certain circumstances where, especially at the end of the first half, it really seemed like it was getting away from Sims, I think that's an appropriate measure. Is that even remotely realistic?
Yes.
Because I know obviously basketball and football are very different.
That's realistic.
People get really weird about taking the quarterback out for any reason.
It's realistic in, at first blush, right? Harburg was obviously warming up. Did not come into the game. Let's just go. We'll go with yes for now, and I'll come back to it.
Second thing, was you've made a very big deal of, not you personally, the coaching staff has made a very big deal about accountability and ownership and things like that. Even if it's not permanent, again, even if it's just temporary, a couple series, be like, hey, Jeff, you have to take better care of the football. I need you to step off for a second because this is what we preach. We need to practice what we preach. Is that at all reasonable?
Yes, but it needs context.
Okay.
He answered the question. He answered your question right after the game, real time. People wanted to talk about Sims. He said, I need to go back and see.
Yeah.
Was this a cadence issue? Was it a timing issue? Were balls snapped early? So I think real time, if you think that guy gives you the best chance to win, you want to make sure that you've exhausted all options to make sure
you err on the side of giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Correct.
Unless you're positive.
Real time.
So
we're afforded the luck. You hear what I'm saying? Though?
Yeah.
We're afforded the luxury of critiquing that.
And we see replays and we see slow motion and things like that.
Remember, like on social media, I mean, I tweeted, I'm like, the time he snapped that too early. It wasn't even a fumble. He just didn't give Bullock a chance to get to the kick out block.
Yeah, right.
It was snapped too early. So even though they had just ran the play for great success, little inside out block in motion, they ran it again to the other side the very next time. And
it didn't work.
He snapped the ball with Bullock hadn't even crossed the center yet.
Right.
So that, and then somebody asked me on social media after the other turnover, he goes, who's that on? And I go, man, I don't know. I have to go back and watch that.
Right.
Because I couldn't get a handle real time. And I think the coaches were the same way. And now it's easy to say, hey, man, catch the ball. Right?
Sure.
Like just catch the snap.
Right.
And clearly he should have, because the first one.
Well, there's a difference
he just dropped that thing.
There's a difference between, hey, he didn't allow Bullock to get to his kickout block on time because the snap timing was off, and he dropped the snap.
Why didn't,
like those are different things, right?
Yeah. Why didn't the Chiefs bench Kadarius Toney?
I don't know that they have anybody else.
Well, you dress 6, and I guarantee you they have a closer wide receiver to Kadarius Toney than
probably
Nebraska has a quarterback closer to Jeff Sims.
Is it feasible, right before we move on here, is it feasible to look at that at halftime, or is that you have to look after the game to see if the cadence is
I
off?
don't know if it's feasible to try to fix that at half when you're trying to make adjustments to.
Okay.
You don't have enough time to get to the bottom of it. You just ask your guy, say, who was that on?
Sure. Okay.
And then you get your answer, whatever it is.
Fair enough. Coming up, we've got more of Benning and Lulla as we kick off hour number 3 with Mike J. Schaefer here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
The show will be back in 4 minutes. The show will be back in 3 minutes. The show will be back in 2 minutes. The show will be back in 1 minute. The show will be back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Wow. I think Tony's fantastic. he has this amazing gift. I'll be honest with you, like that tempo was so fast. I was kind of hoping with some Big Ten refs that slow the tempo down a little bit, and like we wouldn't let them run plays before the chains got set. And, but it was fast, and that's credit to Sean Lewis. He's an excellent coach for them. But I've never seen like a defense be able to get into so many multiple looks versus that tempo. And that's Tony's teaching. That's the defensive staff. But Tony just stays so calm during the game. Like he doesn't get emotional. He just sees what's happening. And I think that, I apologize. I don't have the number. You guys could probably, I think we had 20 some guys on defense play over 10 snaps. So like, again, as I told Reimer and those guys, like I told you, I wouldn't make you play 80 snaps every game. Like we're playing 40. I think Reimer played 50. Some guys are playing 40. Nash played 40. It's because like, I don't notice a difference because everyone's kind of playing at one standard because Tony does such a good job of teaching them and coaching them. I think he's an excellent, excellent, excellent coach.
We're back here with hour number 3 on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi, Lulla. We're now on KFOR in Lincoln.
Hello, Lincoln.
You can also hear us on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities in central Nebraska. We're brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters.
What's up, Big Bro?
That seems right up your alley.
What's up, Big Bro?
Advocating for kids. That's what Big Brothers Big Sisters does. Their mission is to support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. Go to mentoromaha.org to sign up and become a big.
Speaking of bigs, Big Brother Schaefer's here.
I think Schaefer's younger than all of us.
Yeah, but he acts like dad.
Dave, how old are you?
I am 35. I'll be 36 here in about 4 weeks, a month. Okay, I guess so exactly. Today's the 12th, so October 12th, I turned 36.
Okay, so you're exactly 2 months younger than I am.
Yeah. So there we go.
Did
you learn a lot in those 2 months? Is there like a big steep curve coming?
Oh yeah, heading into the last year of my mid-30s, I've really matured quite a bit, as I'm sure Dave will attest.
Yeah.
I don't know that maturity is what I'm looking for.
Shave, you got a lot of dad vibes to you, though, and kind of your lawn mowing, edge trimming, get off of it, keep it green mentality, man. Like, are you sure you weren't supposed to have been born in the 60s?
I mean, it's quite possible that I should have been a member of the greatest generation, but you just, you show up when you show up. I mean, that's just how it works. I can't say it any more than that, really.
I mean, greatest generation seems a little aggressive there, Schaefer, but
I mean, inquiring minds.
If you're gonna set that thing up, and I'm not known for my hitting, I'm gonna put one over the fence on that. So.
I mean, technically, you'd be settling into those boomer vibes more than greatest generation, but who am I to say?
We blur lines over here.
Listen.
All right, Robin Thicke.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you just missed we'd have missed the other great generation with LSD and real hallucinogens in like the 70s. So like you may have a little bit been on the cutting edge.
I don't think anybody needed me as part of that, that run of time.
Shay, full disclosure, were you a little salty that you weren't at the Denver Biscuit Company with your cohorts while you were patrolling and manning the sidelines of a well-attended high school game?
No, I've been there a few different times. It's always a good experience. I don't know if they had been there.
Certainly better than Victor's. I mean, sausage patties, plantains, like
I don't want to throw Victor's under the bus. That was a good Cuban breakfast up there in Minneapolis. Some of us can appreciate that. Other people like you aren't. You're not interested in plantains. There's nothing I can do.
You went with fancy bananas over like breakfast meat. Like, who does that?
This is all part of the experience. Members of the greatest generation would do it, Damon.
Old head, you.
Schaefer, all right, I'm going to start, because we used to talk to you mostly about recruiting, so I'm going to throw you one of those.
Talk to you about your job?
Well, we can go wherever you want. Whatever you'd like to talk
more about. I mean, it's hard to beat last week, man. Like, people were replaying that thing all over the place. And I told people, everybody that I know, he doesn't give that a second thought. That is entirely who you are, and it is in your wheelhouse.
And then you just move on throughout your day, and people are retweeting it, and you're like, should I go back and watch this? No,
it's fine. Not. It's fine. So I'm gonna hit you with recruiting first here because I'm kind of on this platform that I've a crusade, if you will.
It's funny.
To get Anthony Rizak a Power 5 offer, hopefully from Nebraska. I know you were out at Westside Bell West last week. I mean, as you watch him, as you kind of watch some of the other guys that have Power 5 offers in the state, whether quarterback or other positions, I guess when you look at him, what is there a limiting factor you see that's kept him from getting recruited at that level, or what do you see there?
I don't know that there's if there's a one thing that basically has resulted in teams being a little bit worried on it. I think part of it is he has to find kind of the right offense, the right team. You know, like I don't know that Anthony Rizak is going to a 5-wide spread, throw it 60 times a game offense. So then you're obviously looking for more, someone that's going to utilize the quarterback run game. I think that's a big part of what Anthony Rizak does. I think he has no hesitation whatsoever to take the ball and to get hit. So I think some of it is limiting. I honestly, guys, I think that he is a great example of a quarterback that's kind of caught in this no man's land because of the transfer portal. I mean, I just don't think you're going to get teams that are willing to take developmental quarterbacks anymore in their classes because they'll just find somebody in the portal. They might take 2 portal quarterbacks or 1 portal quarterback and 1 high school quarterback. And so those years of where you would see teams, and it wasn't just Nebraska. I mean, it was some of the best teams in the country. Alabama's taken multiple quarterbacks at times. Georgia has. Clemson has. I just don't think you're going to see that as much. So I think one of the things we've learned in the transfer portal era is quarterback recruiting has kind of really changed in the sense that less kids are getting offers now. And so I think Anthony Rizak kind of falls in that category. I mean, you get your guy in the spring or early summer, and you're already moved into the 2025s. I mean, I suspect a lot of the Power 5 teams that he could have been hearing from or should be hearing from are already moved on to 2025 quarterback recruiting. Like, that's the really difficult part of what this transfer portal has kind of done in terms of quarterback recruiting. I think it's probably the most affected singular position.
It's interesting that you say that because I kind of think you're right in terms of where folks are on their recruiting board for years, but a ton of buzz the last week and a half, right? With schools re-engaging for sure. He'll be in Lincoln this weekend. When you look at as well, a couple anyway. When you look at his upside, it's almost 6'4". Do you have to watch him in person to be able to appreciate him, or is this something that you think you kind of know what you're getting? Because I think he's much closer to his floor right now than he is his ceiling.
Yeah, I think
that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think you probably want to see him in person because I think if you watch on film, and I don't want this to come across as any kind of insult because it shouldn't be, but I think if you watch on film, it's going to come off more like this is a really good athlete that they put at the quarterback position. It's probably going to come off a little bit like Gage Stenger, a few years ago, where you have a really good athlete who is just back there making plays. And if you go see him in person and you go, I mean, I was there on Friday night and the very first touchdown of the game, he threw an absolute perfect pass to allow Caleb Benning to go up and catch it over Davon Hall. I mean, that's a touch throw. That's the sort of throw that you want to see out of quarterback that you're recruiting to be at the FBS level or FCS level or, any level. I mean, but those throws aren't going to jump out as much, I think, in a highlight tape because chances are in his highlight tape, you're going to see a lot more like ability to maneuver the pocket, running, hitting people and not getting hit, if that makes sense. So I think when you watch a guy like Anthony Rizak's highlight tape, you're going to see more just straight athleticism. But when you watch him in person, you can see a little bit more refined quarterback. Now, some of the difficulty I have sometimes is I've watched Anthony Rizak for 3 years and probably, 8-9 games at this point or somewhere in that neighborhood. And so I have to allow myself that he's a different player than he was, a year ago or 2 years ago. And sometimes you get really stuck into thinking of somebody like I honestly, prior to this summer when I went and watched one of their opening practices and stuck around as they were throwing, I probably wouldn't have regarded Anthony Rizak as someone who had a chance of playing high-level college football at the quarterback position. But he's continued to get better. Like, he went to camps in the spring, and he's worked with people in the spring and the summer. So he continues to get better in his mechanics. I think that's going to help him. I really feel like he's one of those guys hurt by, like I said, the transfer portal, and then how quickly things fill up in recruiting for classes now. I mean, there's just not that many senior film guys. And he's someone whose senior film is really going to allow you to see that he can be a quarterback more so than what his sophomore or junior film probably is going to do.
I talked to a couple of guys from Nebraska that have said along those lines of evaluating 1 year to the next. He said, you guys, a couple of these guys, and he was specific, are so much better than they were a year ago. It seems like they're on a whole nother level. How much of that? Okay. How much of that do you see when you watch? Because I told people last year, I thought Caleb's junior film, those 2.5 games is pretty average, right? Like, I think he knew that. I think Rizak knew he had to grow in some areas. I think, Christian Jones knew that he got off to a slow start last year. How much of that is just folks where they are in their maturation process physically based on what you saw on Friday? Like, how did that game shake out for you when you watched a lot of elite level talents kind of surface as the game went on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the first thing because I think that gets into really the heart of an interesting conversation about recruiting. And a lot of that is because everything gets sped up, because of the early signing period, because teams want to start working towards the next class. We judge these guys really off of what they've done as sophomores and early as juniors. And then, of course, you get the full junior year. And really the heat map, like the hottest that recruiting happens between December, after a lot of people finish their junior season, and July, before they even start their senior year. And so if you're a guy that's just on a normal maturation process and you're hitting varsity and you're playing varsity as a sophomore and you're catching some attention that way, and you're doing some of the camp circuit stuff and you get a little notoriety, you have a decent junior year, it's all going to just be stock up. But if you're a kid that basically you're a late bloomer, or if you transition positions, or if your body basically develops in such a way that it's, some of it, you're just now catching up to the athleticism that you're thought to possess, and you didn't have that much of a junior year, there's just not that many teams that recruit seniors anymore. And so, what we should see is these guys be really good when they're seniors. I mean, one of the great all-time examples of that to me is a guy like Thomas Fedoni, who you knew was good as a junior, who just went to another level as a senior and was that much better. You don't always see that. I mean, sometimes you see guys regress, or you see guys that kind of cap out, or, the team situation isn't great, and so it doesn't allow people to shine. And so, but when we move recruiting to where it's almost heavily skewed to what they do as sophomores and juniors, it allows you to forget there's a whole year of development that happens before these kids even show up on college campuses. And that development still matters. And good coaches are still going to sift through and try to find these pieces if they can. I mean, guys like Eric Fields or others that people are going to miss. And so I think that's, Nebraska is always going to hold a spot or 2 or 3, for potential senior film guys. And I think that's a valuable thing, because if you move too far ahead, you're going to miss out on some of those pieces. As for Friday night, Bell West and West Side, I mean, I felt like, and I don't want to, these are high school kids, and so I don't want to act like they're professional teams or even college teams or anything like that. It did feel like, just walking the sidelines before and after the game, you have a lot more of a kind of a team vibe coming from West Side, and it felt like Bellevue West was a little bit fractured even before that game started. And so, the chemistry was evident for West Side. I mean, just between how they play and what you're hearing on the sidelines and everything else. I don't know that Bellevue West has that. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have any real interest in getting into the why. I'm not there every day. That's not really for me to answer. But in one night in September, I mean, it definitely felt like you had a team who was collectively moving in one direction versus a team that it kind of felt like spastically 10 different directions from 10 different people, and the game played out that way.
Schaefer, I'm curious how much the 7-on-7 plays into this whole evaluating quarterbacks. I know that that's something that some staffs put a lot of emphasis on. And I guess how much does it harm guys that maybe don't participate in that part of the process?
I mean, it's all a data point, right? Like, I mean, so it's the same thing as when people ask about these camps and refer to them as the underwear Olympics and whatever they want. I mean, it's all a data point. If you're willing to go out there and compete, you're going to have an opportunity to prove what you can do in almost any situation. So if you're a quarterback and you're doing 7-on-7 stuff, there's still things that people can learn about you in 7-on-7. That's going to help them in terms of making decisions as they recruit you. If you're a wide receiver or a defensive back and you don't want to do 7-on-7 in the spring, or you don't want to go to camps or whatever, that's fine. I mean, you're going to have the opportunity to prove it on game film and for the people that are really paying attention to that. But it's less data points that you're going to have to be able to show that you're competitive or that you can compete in these situations or whatever else. It's all about just getting that information and trying to measure out someone's athleticism and then guessing as to what their potential is down the line. I mean, you're not necessarily showing up to a field anymore and just looking for the guy who looks the best right at this moment. You're projecting to what that athleticism and what that body is going to look like 2 years into your system, strength and conditioning wise. And so that's always the hard part about recruiting. And that's why it's never going to be an exact science. And that's why you're going to see things like 7-on-7 or the camps or everything else. You're always looking for different data points, and some stuff is going to rise to the top and it's going to have a run, and then it'll move to the bottom, and the evaluations will change and people will follow the leaders and everything else. But ultimately, the more data that you can provide, the better chance you have of being recruited. I really think like that's what it comes down to.
I already mentioned Anthony's being one. How does the visits look for this weekend for a night game in Lincoln? I get it 0-2, but it is a night game in Lincoln. How is that kind of looking right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, so you got Brandon Baker is expected to come in, and then he's going to make an announcement after this weekend. And that was still the deal kind of heading into the week. So I want to double check on that and make sure that's all lined up. But that's kind of your official visit. Then the rest of it, I imagine you're looking at a lot of unofficials. I haven't really started the process of hitting up people to figure out who is going to be here. But I would imagine you're going to have a lot of Nebraska commits locally are going to come in for this first game. With it being a night game, I would expect that you're going to see a lot of regional guys too. And so, it wouldn't be a surprise if you go down and you see guys in Kansas coming up. I know that there's several 2025s in Kansas, Missouri, the Kansas City area, both sides of the river there that they like. You try to get those guys in for visits. Iowa, of course, they have offers out to a number of 2025s. I think some of those Algona guys are expected to be in here this month as well. So I anticipate that they're going to be bringing in quite a few people these next couple of weeks as you have Michigan and Northern Illinois bookend Louisiana Tech there. So you have 3 weeks where you're going to be bringing people on campus sort of, really for the first time since I guess they have the event at the end of July. And so this is sort of the first opportunity for them to kind of start bringing in kids for 25 and 26 and things of that nature. And it'll be interesting to see how they do it. I mean, what this all looks like. I mean, one of the things that you kind of forget because it's a new staff, they haven't had a game day official visit weekend. We don't know what that looks like for them. They haven't had recruits on campus for a game yet. They did the spring game. But so some of this weekend is just going to be sitting back and sort of taking notes and trying to learn, what they're doing different than Frost and Riley and Pelini and everything that came before it.
Schaefer, you mentioned Brandon Baker, 5-star offensive tackle, #1 tackle in the country. This is, as far as I can tell, the last visit he's going to have before his scheduled announcement. Where does Nebraska actually stand? Do they actually have a legitimate shot here?
I think they're probably on the outside looking in at Ohio State, Texas. Those look like those are the top 2 teams. I think Nebraska really likes Brandon Baker. I think they would be happy to have Brandon Baker, obviously. I mean, he's a highly rated guy. But I think if you put Brandon Baker versus Grant Bricks, and you're like, which one of these recruits do you want to win more? I think it'd be Grant Bricks. You know, I don't know that they're going to get either of those guys, but they certainly are going to try to give themselves an opportunity. But if they were to miss out on Brandon Baker, I don't know that it would hurt near as much as if they end up watching Grant Bricks go to Kansas State or Oklahoma. And so I think there's probably a little bit more emphasis, and this is just me from the outside. I mean, I don't have any extra information here, but if you think about it just in this way, regional kid that's 90 minutes away, that's one of the top offensive linemen in the country versus a kid coming from California, where you always kind of have to have in the back of your mind, okay, what's it look like if he gets here and it's not great? Are we looking at a transfer portal right away situation versus Grant Bricks? I don't think you're worried about that early in his career. And I think that, I think Grant Bricks is a really good player too. So weird sort of commentary on that, but I think Nebraska would love to have Brandon Baker. I think you're probably looking at Texas, Oklahoma, or Ohio State with Nebraska on the outside looking in. But Grant Bricks is a bigger fish out there for the Huskers.
We heard both their names mentioned yesterday. It seems like I'll save the editorial. With Coleman and Lloyd, you more surprised that Coleman hasn't had more of an impact sooner, or more surprised that Lloyd has emerged as being right there?
I'm not surprised about Coleman because I didn't think that he was going to be a immediate impact guy. I mean, I didn't think any of their receivers were going to be. I thought Jaden Doss had the best opportunity to, but to me, I looked at a lot of their receivers and I don't want this to come across poorly, but Nebraska went out and recruited track athletes and really good athletes and guys that haven't played a ton of wide receiver, that still have to learn the nuances of the position, still have to get the playbook down, still need to know the route trees and where they need to be in certain situations against certain coverages. And none of them were here, before June really. And so my expectations for the freshman wide receivers were pretty low to begin with. And so I think for me, as you phrase that question, the answer is probably a little bit more surprised that Jalen Lloyd has kind of emerged as the guy that is in the best position to help Nebraska right now. Yeah. And I think that speaks to his competitive nature. I mean, when I first started talking with Jalen Lloyd, and I think it was his back half of his junior year, he showed up for a Nebraska event, and you could just see the athleticism on film. But one of the things when you talk with him, he's just a super competitive guy. Like, he is going to work really hard at everything, and you don't just end up as a multi-time state champion and what he's able to do if you're not willing to put in the work. And so
if he came to work, he came to work every day.
Yeah,
even
I mean, that's just who he is.
He came to practice every day on crutches.
Yeah, that's who he is. I mean, that's what Jalen, when my first interaction with him, you can kind of tell like that's just how he is. And I think that's how he was raised. And I think that's why he's probably put himself in the best position, because it was a challenge for him. He's also someone who doesn't like when people say that he can't do something.
And he just turned 18 too. That's even scarier.
That's Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. We appreciate you, Schaefer. We'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Mike J.
All right. The Zipline Sports Six-Pack coming up next.
We'll be right back in 5 minutes. We'll be right back in 4 minutes. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We'll be right back in 1 minute. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. Time now for the Sports Six-Pack, presented by Zipline Brewing Company, makers of Dear Old Nebraska Brew, the official beer of Nebraska alumni.
Welcome to the Sports Six-Pack, presented by Zipline Brewing. Their Dear Old Nebraska Brew is a great option for any time. You can visit them at their downtown Omaha tap room across the street from TD Ameritrade Park. They've also got a beer lounge at 3808 South 203rd Plaza. They've got the beer hall in South Lincoln, and of course their brewery tap room. All great options and great places to try Dear Old Nebraska Brew. Get it at your favorite Nebraska sports bar. All right, Shane, you ready to get this thing cracking?
Yeah. You want to go?
Let's do it.
Question number 1.
Did FSU get the better end of the Jimbo Fisher situation?
So obviously Jimbo leaves for Texas A&M.
Yeah, 100%.
And at that time, you end up with Willie Taggart at Florida State and Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. Certainly looks like Texas A&M is in a better spot. Fast forward to today.
Yeah.
You'd rather have Mike Norvell than Jimbo Fisher, right?
I'd rather be FSU than Texas A&M.
Okay. Not willing to go quite as far as saying you take Norvell over Fisher, but just current situationally.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I look at it, right?
Yeah.
Because if we assume that one is directly responsible for the other, for their particular situation, I'd rather be FSU.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. And it wasn't. I mean, even 2 years ago,
Mike Norvell
that's probably not the answer.
Doesn't appear to be, doesn't appear to be as high maintenance either.
Well, that's what got Jimbo and FSU to part ways, right?
I'm so into this now. You talk about old man. I'm into low maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm into low maintenance players. I'm into low maintenance coaching. I'm into low maintenance households, like
low maintenance people in my life.
And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be your way. It just means people that are self-motivated to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you just win a lot more. You're a lot more successful, again, when you don't need babysitters.
But you take 2 years ago, you're coming off of 2020, Texas A&M, they're the next big thing. Since then, it's been totally opposite direction.
I just don't feel like I would ever relax with Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Shane, what's next?
What is your favorite song right now?
Is there something you're bumping to lately? You got in the...
Yeah, it's old. It's not new.
Right, but whatever it is, yeah.
I'm a big ASAP Ferg and Future New Level.
Okay.
I'm on a new level because that's just kind of my theme, right?
Okay.
Just trying to elevate and be better. I'm ASAP Ferg and New Level. Not new though.
That's all right. That's all right.
Not new.
I'm listening lately. I've had this song for whatever reasons. I've been playing it over and over.
Search
again.
and Rescue, feeling a little like Drake, or
no? It's called "This Too Shall Pass" by OK Go. It's a little bump. It's a little banger. I like it.
OK Go.
Yeah.
How have I not heard that? Am I not around the kids enough?
I don't know if it's like a popular song for kids. I don't know if it's like a millennial song. I don't know what it is, but I like it.
OK Go.
OK Go. This Too Shall Pass. It's a good song.
It's kind of how I feel about hiccups in my life.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. This too shall pass. We're all right.
Pass.
Shane, number 3.
Question number 3. Did Matt Rule actually say or do anything that the Sanders family should be upset about?
No. From all the intel that I've gathered, absolutely not.
Okay, because I know we kind of got into this a little bit earlier, but I was genuinely trying to find, like, okay, is there a miscommunication here?
The fake chip on the shoulder thing?
Yeah, is this genuinely they're just finding a reason
Sanders
to be upset?
seemed to imply that they took too long, right? Is that not what the clock, or is it almost game time? I'm not hip, so what did the watch mean?
I don't know.
Like he showed his watch.
Yeah, like I thought it was like a guess what time it is type deal.
Is it like game time, or you guys are taking too long? Keep it pushing, because it kind of seemed to be okay at the time.
Yeah, it didn't seem to make a big deal about it at the time. But even so, that I kind of brushed aside. But then he talks about, he said all these things about my pops in the offseason,
which is not true.
I don't think he said his name once.
No, and even if you wanted to reach and say we just don't have a camera rolling all the time, he's never been anything but complimentary. I'm not just defending Rule. Like, you're making him out like that needed context.
Yeah, and they made it out to be something that seemed totally outside of what it actually was.
Listen, I knew what he thought of Dion. He's the one that made me a little concerned about the Colorado game before the season started.
Because he was talking about how
my very first talk that I did in Nebraska City, this is before Minnesota.
Yeah.
They asked me about swing games.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, Colorado, they concern me.
Yeah.
Just because I think Coach Rule was well aware of what they were putting together.
Fair enough. Yeah, it felt like a lot of fake outrage to me.
Yeah.
And I don't really understand.
It's usually what it is. It's what makes the world go round, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Shane, let's keep going.
Question number 4.
If Aaron Rodgers misses the rest of the season, what is the Jets' ceiling as a fan or as a team? Sorry.
So if you watched that team last night, and it's hard
that looks like a 7-win team in that division
without Aaron Rodgers.
Correct.
Because with Aaron Rodgers, I like that defense a lot. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's an incredible receiver. Breece Hall looked good, at least in little spurts there. You think maybe that's a team that has a chance to be in the Final Four. I don't know if it's Super Bowl team or not, but you could see him in the AFC Championship game, right? Yep. If Aaron Rodgers was there.
And I still didn't have him. I'm a little hard-headed, but that's okay.
But it's not crazy to have thought that.
No.
I don't know that they make the playoffs without him.
It looks like a 7-win team.
Unless they go out and sign somebody else that's not currently on the roster.
Yeah.
Like Zach Wilson is not taking this team to the playoffs, right?
No.
All right, Shane.
How backwards is it that you have the NFL, that you have the Lions, the Browns, the Raiders, and I'm missing one other team that are the top teams right now? I mean, it's just weird, the NFL is right now.
I mean, the 49ers are pretty good.
So Daryl LaMonica, Jim Brown, and they're not playing?
It's been a minute since those guys were in the league.
It's been about 2 minutes.
Didn't it used to be like, what are we talking about?
Well, you forgot about the greatness of Jimmy G in Las Vegas now.
Hey, Jimmy G was out here looking like Joe Montana.
All that dude is win. All that dude does is win.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I think you made that question up, Shane.
I did. But I wanted to have an extra beer there.
Oh, you wanted to get your 2 teams in, which is ludicrous.
Well, and I missed one. There's one other team that's thrown me off there. I'm like, how is the NFL?
My buddy swung by yesterday and brought me a terrible towel and a Steelers hat. And my little girl's trying to jack me for the hat.
You said she loves hats,
I said, did
man.
you just not hear him say that I have a big head? He goes, well, I know you said you had a big head. I was like, wait, Mike, it's a little much. He said, it's funny shaped.
Keep on drinking,
Go
Shane.
ahead, Shane. Have another.
Okay, question 5. What's a chain restaurant that you actually think is really good?
Oh, easy.
Go ahead.
Outback.
You're a big Outback guy?
Outback is pretty good for what it is.
You know what I've been messing with lately?
Oh, Lord.
I've been really feeling P.F. Chang's.
So P.F. Chang's used to be my thing. Do you know?
They're pretty good.
Do you know why I quit?
Why is that?
Why I quit them after a bad date?
Why is that?
You don't get enough food.
See, that's true.
You don't get enough
That's
food.
why I just order more.
P.F. Chang's is legit.
Their food is really good.
So I didn't realize there's multiple Firebirds too. There's a Firebirds in Des Moines.
Yeah, it's not like a national chain, but there's a lot of Firebirds. It's kind of like Mahogany. There's like a handful of Mahoganies.
So I wish I could count that because I think Firebirds is never had a bad meal at Firebirds, and for the money, it may be the best meal going. That or Timber on 89th and Pacific.
I don't think I've been to Firebirds.
Dude, Firebirds is
I've been to Timber. I had a really good mac and cheese at Timber last time I was there.
Timber has a smoked ribeye.
Yeah.
It goes bananas.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I might have to try that.
Oh,
yeah, I mean like national chains because like Mahogany technically a chain.
I went there with this dude, Cluster, and my man got Brussels sprouts.
Dude, I don't mess with Brussels sprouts.
I couldn't believe it.
I'm not about that life.
Who are you? And what are you doing?
I'm not about that Brussels sprouts life. I don't care how you dress them up. No, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, question 6. What's the most surprising thing you saw from college football weekend?
Oh, boy. College football was the gift that kept on giving this weekend.
It was a fun
By
weekend.
the way, if you want to take the weekend off of viewing games, feel free to skip this week.
Yeah, this weekend is dog doo-doo.
Yeah.
It is terrible.
Isn't that typical, though? Second week?
It's usually second or third week. There's usually one in there that's bad. Mine is pretty easy. I was shocked that Texas actually rose to a moment.
So,
the talent-wise, I knew they were there, but they generally collapse in these moments.
They're a top 10 team, but they don't look very good. Something may be going on in Knoxville. I'm not sure how good Tennessee is.
I thought they might regress from last year.
Yeah. I know you wondered if Milton was that dude.
Yeah, I did. All right, coming up next, we've got our friend Martie Cordaro from the Omaha Storm Chasers.
The show will be back in 4 minutes. The show will be back in 3 minutes. The show will be back in 2 minutes. The show will be back in 1 minute. The show will be back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
We're wrapping up the show here on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. I want to tell you real quick about our friends at Dingman's. They have been in business for over 25 years in Omaha, family owned and operated. They've got the latest technology. You can take any type of car there. 4 locations throughout the metro area and voted first place Best of Omaha for 18 years. The thing that we like most about them, though, despite the incredible service, despite the incredible packages they offer, is their give back program. Go to dingmans.com/r-community to find out more about that. We're here now to find out more from our friend Martie Cordaro, the president of the Omaha Storm Chasers. Martie, how are you this morning?
Good morning. How we doing, everyone?
What's up, dual hat guy? How we doing?
Doing okay. Getting ready for Final Six for baseball, and as soccer continues its march towards the top of the table, it's been another successful summer at Warner Park, but now it's fall, and it's a great time of year.
Yeah, so
baseball's finishing up, soccer's finishing up, college football, NFL. It's a great time of year.
Anybody that cares a lot about you make like a split T-shirt or a split hat for you to wear, like moms or dads that have 2 kids at one school, 2 different schools or something like that?
I haven't had that done before. That's I guess takes someone creative like DB to come up.
Oh,
with
fudge!
No, I don't.
Big idea, guy. Terrible with protocol.
It's funny though. We have a number of fans that are Cubs fans here in Market, but they've become Storm Chasers fans over the years. So We have a couple fans that have a half Storm Chasers, half Chicago Cubs jersey they wear when the Iowa Cubs come to town. It's kind of funny.
Marty, before we get to the Storm Chasers, you were talking about Union Omaha, which you have been on a roll lately, currently third place in the USL 1 standings. What is it, 8 wins in a row now?
Yeah, league record 8 in a row. We've won 12 of 14, something like that. It's
just 1 point.
Oh, those double-digit numbers get hard to track. I
just
know.
1 point out of first place there.
Yeah, 1 point out of first. We're at Chattanooga this weekend, and then we come home next week to play Central Valley. And then we go back on the road the following week to play first place North Carolina, which we were able to bite at home on Wednesday night. So we're right there. You know, this club, coached by Dominic Cassiato, our first-year leader, you know, started off slow. We all expected a major change, and you can tell by, you know, we've already set a goals record far and away. We're headed towards 40, 45 goals. I think the most ever was an upper 20. So it's a different style. It's a more exciting style than we played the first 3 years.
Yeah, definitely much more open.
Yeah. And it took some time, and, you know, we kept supporting Coach Cassiato, and, you know, Peter Marlette, our GM, myself, and Gary Green. We just said, you know, Dom, stick with the program. We're behind you. Because early in the year, you know, we were down next to last. And really the beginning of June is when things really clicked. And I tell people this, and I don't know that everybody's happy when I say what I'm about to say, but I think losing early this year in the Open Cup really gave us an opportunity to focus on the regular season. Because if you think back last year, you know, we made it to the quarterfinals, you know, the deepest a club at our level had gone since the early 90s. It was exciting. It was fun. But when we came out of that run, our gas gauge was really pretty close to empty. And we really limped. We were in first place during that run, and then we barely, you know, made the playoffs, finishing, you know, I believe it was 5th out of, you know, in the top 6 make it, and we made a quick exit. So I think this year's a little different. That the guys are more rested. They're really enthused with the style of play. Half of the squad is new, and if you haven't tried pro soccer yet, next match at home, September 23rd. Against Central Valley Fuego, and you know, it should be a fun night at Warner Park.
Look at you with the lingo down, calling it a match. You're the man. Now, I can't remember them all. I know you have like Winning Wednesday, you have Hispanic Heritage Night. I think you have a $2 entry night. The one that I'm interested in is, how old do I have to be able to qualify for senior bingo during this homestand?
You're not there yet. But if you want to be an honorary, bingo caller,
64.
But you have to make it over quickly. You're not too far from the park. So
I am right by you.
I know. Gates at 11, so bingo starts right at 11. And I know you've got a little bit of window between 10 and 11, so you let me know, and I can take care of that. Yeah, that's today. It's the 12:05 first pitch. Indianapolis is in town. And yeah.
So is that different than scoring like E6 or E5? Because last I checked, there's no E in bingo. Like, what else could I do to be functional if it's not baseball related?
I guess we should change that then. Maybe next year for bingo, we have custom created cards where it's BE instead of BI. So,
bingo.
See, Damon,
bingo. Isn't that how they say it in Ruston? It's not bango?
No, we don't say that in Ruston. Come on, DB.
Marty, you mentioned the 12:05 first pitch here this afternoon against Indianapolis. You're here, your last homestand through Sunday. What are some of the other fun promotions you got going on for this final homestand?
Yeah. Winning Wednesday tomorrow night, and DB mentioned our final $2 deals day of the year. That's Thursday, and for those that haven't tried it, $2 hot dogs, $2 beers, $2 nachos, $2 soft serve, $2 popcorn, and if you're one of the first, I believe it's first 500 fans, you get a $2 ticket. So that's this Thursday night, 6:35. Friday night, 6:35 game is Hispanic Heritage Night. No fireworks on Friday. Our final fireworks show this year is actually on Saturday night. It's a special 4:30 gates.
Oh.
Yours truly's band will be playing at 4:30 to 5:30, and then 5:35 first pitch, and then Warner Enterprises presents our final fireworks night of the year. on Saturday night. So that should be a big game. And then Fan Appreciation Day final game is 2:05 on Sunday. So it's hard to believe it's here. We always, anticipate a long season, and it is long. But now, I tell you what, it's quick. 6 more games, and we're excited to celebrate these final 6.
You kind of tried to low-key bury the lead there. What's on the playlist at 4:30 on Saturday?
Oh, it's going to be a mix. I'll pull it up here, DB, as we're talking.
Let's
now.
go.
I'll let you know what the playlist is going to be. But, we've kind of become a bit of a Widespread Panic tribute band. So we'll have some Widespread Panic songs on there. Yeah, you got the southern classic rock, southern rock in there, but we'll have some Grateful Dead in there. We play a couple originals, Fish, and and then probably maybe a Tom Petty song thrown in there around 4:30. So yeah, be a fun afternoon of music.
Do you guys take requests, Marty? Do you can you get that? Can we get a request in?
Probably not for Saturday because with my schedule, there's no rehearsal time between here and Saturday, but next time.
All right. I'm going to send you a list next time, Marty.
Marty, I got to ask real quick, and I know you're used to dealing with multiple things at once, and your lifestyle is pretty fluid, but it's typically not as fluid as it's been with your guys' roster. Like, what?
Oh, man.
I'm just curious with your personality, like, you're watching the season unfold and you're looking at the roster moves and who's available, who isn't. Like, did you just roll with the punches, or like, how'd that work?
Well, when I first started in the business in '99, I thought I had an understanding of minor league baseball, and it was very small. And it took me about, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks to realize that we really have zero influence on a roster. On a makeup of a squad, and that was AA, which is dramatically different than AAA. And so I went through that, and I worked for AA and for 6 years in the Southern League, and then my first GM job was A-ball, where there was even less roster movement. And then when I moved to Omaha, my first year in 2007, I was blown away at the number of roster moves. And at the AAA level, you're talking about 160 to 200, 170 to 210 moves. And we're going to be north of 250, 260 this year. And some of that has to do with, the Royals just injury luck. Some of it has to be with performance. And some of it has to do with just the youth of the players, and the lack of experience. So we have had a lot of guys here that are getting valuable AAA experience that really needed more AA seasoning. And then the same thing. Players that have gone on to Kansas City that probably needed a little bit more AAA seasoning. But for me, I watch it. You look at our manager, Mike Dershally, and DB, you and I have had this conversation. A AAA manager is probably the hardest managerial / head coaching job in all of sports, amateur or professional, because you really have little control over who you can even put out on the field.
And guys mainly want to leave you.
Well, they do. They've made their way up through the minor leagues, and the last place they want to be is AAA because they're one step from the big leagues, and then vice versa. When they get there, then they say, well, maybe I didn't get enough at bats, or I didn't get enough innings. I want to get back to the big leagues. And then you have rehab guys that are not here to perform. They're here just to make sure their knee or ankle or shoulder is okay. They're not worried about stats. It's about reps. So it's tough. When you win at the AAA level, it's special because that's really not the focus at this level.
Marty, all right, I'm going to have to shoot you a DM because I'm eyeballing this Wednesday, October 4th for Union Omaha, and I'm gonna have to get out because I haven't been out yet. I really enjoy soccer, so I'll be.
Yes, you do.
I do. I'm a big soccer guy, so I'll be in your DMs. We'll see if we can figure something out. All right.
Let's do it, and I know what you're talking about. That's our first bobblehead we've ever done.
Ooh,
on the Omaha side. So Rashid Nuhu, who is far and away the top goalkeeper in League One, and arguably all at both levels championship in League One. So first 1,200 fans that night, courtesy of Nebraska State Soccer, will get a Rashid Nuhu bobblehead.
You're the man, MC.
Martie Cordaro, Omaha Storm Chasers Union Omaha president. Marty, we love talking to you as always. Have a good one.
Yeah. great time. And DB, we'll have to talk next week before the Louisiana Tech game.
You got it.
All right. That's all for Benning and Lulla. We'll see you tomorrow.